Suggestions on how the board could improve services and the taxpayer experience, make sure to attend the annual Taxpayers Bill of Rights hearings in Culver City on April 26th or Sacramento on May 24th. If you'd like more information, visit boe.ca.gov.
Okay, so we have your W-2 and mortgage deduction, your receipts, charitable deductions, mileage claims. Let's see, are we missing anything else? Oh, do you owe any use tax?
What's use tax?
It's usually owed when you buy something from an out-of-state company or website that didn't charge you California sales tax. So do you think you may owe use tax?
Gosh. You know, I did a lot of online shopping this year. I think I have some receipts from a few things I bought.
Oh, that's easy to add in on your return. Let's see what you have.
The revenue collected from use tax helps pay for important California services like public safety, healthcare, and schools. Remember, when you file, pay your use tax. To learn more, visit boe.ca.gov. Paying your use tax. Good for you, good for California.
The Taxpayers' Rights Advocate of the State Board of Equalization wants you to know you have rights. As a California taxpayer, your rights are protected during the assessment and collection of taxes, including the right to courteous and prompt service and the right to be treated fairly during all dealings with Board of Equalization employees and officers of the Board. Publication 70, Understanding Your Rights as a California Taxpayer, and Publication 145, California Taxpayer Advocates, can be useful in learning about your rights. If you feel the BOE has not resolved your concerns adequately, please contact the Taxpayers' Rights Advocates Office at 1-888-324-2798 or email us. The Taxpayers' Rights Advocate of the State Board of Equalization. We're here for you.
You asked, and we listened. Together, we've designed a California State Board of Equalization website with you in mind. The convenient login button allows you to access many of our online services from anywhere at any time. Drop-down menus make navigation easy. You can do everything from filing a return and making a payment to finding permits and licenses. Our interactive banners highlight the latest news, programs, and services. Popular topics help you find information quickly. The How Do I and Business Center sections offer you even more helpful resources, including individual tax guides for various industries. We also want to hear from you. Tell us, how was your experience? Your feedback is important because it helps us provide you with an improved and more interactive website. So check it out at boe.ca.gov. It's designed with you in mind.
It's easy to buy things online these days, but did you know you may need to pay tax on those items?
Really?
It's called use tax. And just like sales tax, the use tax you pay to California will help fund important services like public safety, healthcare, and schools. But how do you know if you owe use tax? When you buy things online, look to see if you were charged tax when you checked out. If you weren't, you may owe use tax. It's easy to figure out how little you may owe. For most purchases, you don't even have to save your receipts. Just use this convenient use tax table, available in your income tax instructions. Find your adjusted gross income to see how much you may owe, and enter that amount when preparing your state income taxes. It's that simple. No looking through files and no hassles. You've paid your use tax for the whole year.
That was easy.
Paying your use tax. Good for you. Good for California.
We're committed to supporting our communities, teaming up with businesses large and small, improving our roads and schools, investing in law enforcement and our environment. Together, we're funding a better quality of life. We're the California State Board of Equalization. The BOE was created in 1879 to equalize property tax assessment practices throughout California. Our responsibility has grown quite a bit since then. Today, the BOE administers more than 30 taxes and fees that provide 1/3 of all the revenue generated in our great state. And we're efficient. More than 99% of the money you contribute supports services and programs that benefit all of us in California. When you drive down our many highways, see a police officer helping someone in need, or enjoy a walk along a pristine beach, think about what makes it possible. Whether you're a business owner, making a purchase, or just filling up your gas tank, your contributions are important to our state's economic health. And the greatest part, we're doing it together. We're ready to work with you. Take advantage of our free seminars, helpful classes, instructional videos, and mobile applications. Also, use our online services. It's easy to do business with us from anywhere, at any time. Our partnership equals success. Learn more at boe.ca.gov. Together, we're supporting our communities and funding a better quality of life.
Members of the Board of Equalization want to hear from you. If you have ideas, concerns, or suggestions on how the board could improve services in the taxpayer experience, make sure to attend the annual Taxpayers Bill of Rights hearings in Culver City on April 26th or Sacramento on May 24th. If you'd like more information, visit boe.ca.gov.
Okay, so we have your W-2 and mortgage deduction, your receipts, charitable deductions, mileage claims. Let's see, are we missing anything else? Oh, do you owe any use tax?
What's use tax?
It's usually owed when you buy something from an out-of-state company or website that didn't charge you California sales tax. So do you think you may owe use tax?
Gosh. You know, I did a lot of online shopping this year. I think I have some receipts from a few things I bought.
Oh, that's easy to add in on your return. Let's see what you have.
The revenue collected from use tax helps pay for important California services like public safety, healthcare, and schools. Remember, when you file, pay your use tax. To learn more, visit boe.ca.gov. Paying your use tax. Good for you. Good for California.
The Taxpayers' Rights Advocate of the State Board of Equalization wants you to know you have rights. As a California taxpayer, your rights are protected during the assessment and collection of taxes, including the right to courteous and prompt service and the right to be treated fairly during all dealings with Board of Equalization employees and officers of the Board. Publication 70, Understanding Your Rights as a California Taxpayer, and Publication 145, California Taxpayer Advocates, can be useful in learning about your rights. If you feel the BOE has not resolved your concerns adequately, please contact the Taxpayers' Rights Advocates Office at 1-888-324-2798 or email us. The Taxpayers' Rights Advocate of the State Board of Equalization. We're here for you.
You asked, and we listened. Together, we've designed a California State Board of Equalization website with you in mind. The convenient login button allows you to access many of our online services from anywhere at any time. Drop-down menus make navigation easy. You can do everything from filing a return and making a payment to finding permits and licenses. Our interactive banners highlight the latest news, programs, and services. Popular topics help you find information quickly. The How Do I and Business Center sections offer you even more helpful resources, including individual tax guides for various industries. We also want to hear from you. Tell us, how was your experience? Your feedback is important because it helps us provide you with an improved and more interactive website. So check it out at boe.ca.gov. It's designed with you in mind.
Good morning, members and guests. Ms. Richmond, will you please call the roll to establish a quorum?
Chairwoman Ma,
Here.
Ms. Harkey,
Here.
Mr. Horton,
Here.
Mr. Runner.
Here.
Ms. Yee. I'm sorry, Ms. Dowers.
Here.
Okay, a quorum has been established with at least 3 members present. Ms. Richmond, please call the first item.
The first item on this morning's agenda is item C, Sales and Use Tax Appeals Hearings. Item C1, Morrison Auto Corporation, please come forward. Board Proceedings has received contribution disclosure forms for today's hearings from the parties, participants, and agents. All forms were properly completed and signed. No disqualifying contributions were disclosed. All parties, participants, and agents are on the alpha listings provided to your office. Each person sitting at the table will be asked to introduce themselves and, if necessary, their affiliation with the taxpayer for the record. 10 minutes is allocated for the taxpayer's opening presentation, followed by 10 minutes for the department's presentation, and 5 minutes is allocated to the taxpayer for rebuttal. Chairwoman Ma.
Thank you very much. Mr. Njija, will you please introduce the issues in this case?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. I am Jeff Njija on behalf of the Appeals Division. The appeal before you presents one unresolved issue, which is whether additional adjustments to the amount of unreported taxable sales are warranted.
Okay. To the appellants, please introduce yourself, and you will have 10 minutes to make your presentation, and then the department will make their presentation for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back to you on 5 minutes for rebuttal. And then I'll open it up for questions from all the members.
My name is Svetlana Dalina. I'm a representative of Morrison Auto Corporation.
Can you put your microphone down a little bit so we can hear?
My name is Svetlana Dalina. I am representative for Morrison Auto Corporation.
Okay.
And my name is Ina Tobis, and I'm a representative for Morrison Corporation as well.
Okay, great. Please begin.
Okay. Our client just gave us additional information stating that there are some large amount of money that was personal money that she deposited in her business account. The reason for that deposit was they were trying to get a loan to purchase a building, and they showed the personal deposits on their tax return. She collected the notes from people who lent money to her, and she filed amended tax returns to show a reduction in gross sales because they overstated gross sales in order to qualify for bigger loan. Even they had to pay income tax on this money. That was her explanation. And previously, what I've read, the case, she did not have those notes, and she provided them now. The total amount for all the money the personal money was $251,600, and the notes provided as a backup. And it was not taken in consideration previously.
Okay. Anything else? No?
That's it.
Okay, good. To the department, if you would please introduce yourself and commence your presentation.
Good morning, Chairwoman Ma and members. My name is Scott Lambert, and I'll be representing the Business Tax and Fee Department today. To my right is Kevin Hanks, also with the Business Tax and Fee Department, and to Mr. Hanks' right is Stephen Smith with the Legal Department. In this particular case, the taxpayer operates 3 separate types of businesses. One is an auto paint seller, both a retailer and wholesaler. They operate a auto body collision repair shop, and they also have spray booths that are leased out to customers. When the audit was conducted, it was noted that the reported sales of tangible personal property was below the cost of goods sold on the income tax returns. The taxpayer was asked for their records. For the years 2009 and 2010, the records were not available. They were either destroyed or stolen. The taxpayer did provide records for 2011, and the audit was established based on the records that were provided for 2011. They provided invoices for the Morrison Paint Company. They also provided invoices for the Victory Auto Repair, and they provided sales invoices for the rental. From a review of the records, it was determined that all the rental receipts for the spray booths were non-taxable. The taxpayer had paid tax on the purchase of those, and they were considered non-taxable in the audit. For Victory Auto Collision Repair, we used the invoices for 2011 to establish the liability. These are the taxpayer's own sales invoices where they had collected tax. The taxpayer had indicated that none of those sales had been reported on the sales and use tax returns. So it was established about 15% of the income from Victory was subject to tax. Inversely, 85% of that income was considered non-taxable. For Morrison, we decided to take 1 quarter, which was the second quarter of 2011. We took a look at each one of the sales invoices where the taxpayer had charged tax on the invoices, and we established the quarterly sales based on the second quarter of 2011. When we added up all of our audited sales for 2011, it matched the amounts that were reported on the income tax return to a minimal amount. When we established a percentage of error for 2009 and 2010, the 2010 audited total sales also matched the amount of sales that were reported on the income tax returns. So, based on that, the audit was established in that manner. Regarding the taxpayer's arguments in regards to the bank statements, we did take a look at the bank statements and did a reconciliation. We allowed almost $300,000 in loans and transfers that were on the bank account. In addition, if you just take 2010 and 2011, we still had a difference, unaccounted for difference, that went into the bank of over $300,000. So if you take, assuming that these loans did take place and they were deposited into the business bank account, and I'll point out we don't have that information in front of us, but if we did, we would still be below the amount of unaccounted for deposits into the bank account. So just to reiterate, we didn't use the bank accounts. We used the taxpayer's actual purchase or sales invoices to establish the liability. And I would also point out on the amended tax returns, I just had a brief time to review them this morning. I don't believe that these amended returns can be filed due to the date. And also on the cost of goods sold, I note that the cost of goods sold has not changed other than 2011. It appears that that had gone up, and it shows $304,000, and I believe our audited sales for 2011 is total sales of paint and parts is $220-something thousand. So even you look at a markup at this type of business, we're well below what an established markup would be for that. type of business. So accordingly, the department concurs with the Appeals Division decision and recommendation.
Okay. To the taxpayers, you have 5 minutes on rebuttal to anything that they said.
Well, I just wanted to add that mainly 2011 was used to estimate, go back and estimate 2010 and 2009. And according to the records we got from client, the main portion of the personal money were deposited in 2009 and 2010. 2009 was 53,600 and 2010 was 170,000 and 2011 was only 28,000 of personal money. So using 2011 to estimate 2010 and 2009 wouldn't be really a correct approach because there's a large difference between personal deposits in all those years.
So how much was deposited 2009, 2010, 2011?
2009 was 53,600, 2010 was 170,000, and 2011 was 28,000.
That's the 251,600.
Right.
Okay. Questions? Ms. Harkey.
This is for the department. So you didn't use those cash deposits anywhere? You actually...
We did not use the bank reconciliation to establish the liability, and consequently, we did not do anything with
the cash
any
received
kind.
or not received, or loans repaid or not, you looked at their records?
We looked at their sales invoices for 2011, which is the only sales invoices that they had available, or at least that they provided to us, and we used those invoices to establish the liability and not the bank account. If we had used the bank account, it would have established a higher liability, even if we took out these loans. So, and that was, the auditor said that's one of the reasons why they didn't use the bank accounts, but we could have been well within our rights to use them.
To the taxpayers' side, why are you continuing to focus on the bank deposits, these amounts, if they weren't actually part of the audit?
Basically because normal ordinary business like Morrison, they don't have 100% collectible ratio, I would say. If we bill customers, it's not 100% this ordinary business to receive money back. So it's, I would say, it's definitely bank analysis should be done in this situation because it's reflect actual money collected from the customers.
So what you're saying is that you did work and you didn't, even though you invoiced for it, you didn't get paid on the invoices?
This is just our assumptions because we didn't compare all invoices. We just did bank analysis and just receive information from the customers that some money were deposited on the bank account. So this is just assumption. We didn't investigate this, but in general, from accounting point, it's.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because your whole case seems to focus on these amounts of deposits at different times, but yet that wasn't part of the audit, and you're here for an audit issue. So I'm trying to figure out why these are so important to you from your perspective if they're not part of the audit. I'm still not clear on that. Because they used your invoices for 2011, which is all that they had.
Right.
They didn't use your bank accounts or check your cash records. They weren't worried about, they were just using your invoices.
And they
based on
estimated 2009 and 2010 based on 2011.
Based on 2011. So in 2000, but you didn't have records for 2010 and 9, right?
According to the client, I think there was a break-in or something. They were stolen. They didn't have.
Okay. Let me go back to the department. I'm just confused as to why these would be considered. I guess maybe what they're saying is they had more invoices in 2011, and so if using that to extrapolate the previous years,
Right.
they did not think that was accurate, so they're showing you that they really didn't have these sales? I mean, am I understanding this correctly?
Right, they overstated the sales.
You overstated the sales, so just respond.
Okay. I didn't understand that to be their argument, but given that it is, what I would point out is that we use their actual sales invoices for 2011, and that it matched the sales or gross receipts on the income tax returns for 2011, and the amount that we came up with in 2010 matched the gross receipts that were on the 2010 invoices, and the amounts that we came up with are lower than the deposits into the bank account for 2010 and 2011. So based on that, it appears that
It appears that you've allocated appropriately.
that's, and without the 09 and 2010 invoices, the only way we can establish a liability.
Did you track back to the 2009 and 10 tax returns?
We did with 2010, we did, and it matched up. For 2009, the problem with that is that we only audited for 2 quarters out of that year,
So that
and
would
so
be tough.
it's not the same basis.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Dowers.
Thank you. To the department, just kind of clarification, you indicated that you had the 2011 invoices.
Yes.
Did you say anything about taxes was collected?
They were.
They were.
Well, they, just to be clear, they were collected for 2 of the business operations. They were collected for Morrison Paint, and they were collected for Victory Auto Collision. They were not collected for the spray booth rentals, which we determined to be non-taxable because the material was purchased, tax paid, and leased in substantially the same form as acquired.
And were you able to tell from the invoice if the customers paid by cash or credit card?
I don't believe, I'm unsure of that. I just have a printout of, I have a schedule of the invoices and the amounts that were paid on there, but I can't tell, or I don't know whether you can tell from the invoices or not.
But you can't tell that the business collected taxes?
That taxes were separately stated on the sales invoices.
On the sales
correct.
invoices.
And those are the figures that we used. We didn't, other than a minor amount of resales that were disallowed, is based on the amount of sales tax that was on the actual sales invoices themselves that were extrapolated.
With respect to the federal income tax returns, is it your testimony that the gross receipts on the 2011 tax return reconciled with the taxable measure that you're coming up with, the department came up with?
The gross receipts on the, yes, on the gross receipts on the 2011 original tax return matches the gross receipts that were arrived at in the audit. That's correct.
Is there a change on this tax return that we have as an exhibit? Is that the same number?
It is not.
This number is less?
Yes. The cost of goods sold on this one has changed as well. For 2011, they reported $450,000 in gross receipts. And on the return that we have here for 2011, the amended return that's just been provided, we have $394,000. So there's a difference of $56,000. I'm not sure how that was established based on, even if you took the non-sales deposits that's being provided, it doesn't match 56,000. Well, it does. It exactly equals that. So they've taken the deposits on there and have reduced the amount on the original income tax return to the amount on the amended return for 2011.
To reflect the cash deposits.
The loans.
For the loans.
The asserted loans.
Right.
Okay.
And so what I would point out is that they still have the cost of goods sold. Well, I shouldn't say they still have. They reported or claimed $252,000 in, I'm sorry. The cost of goods sold for 2011 remains the same.
No change?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. To the petitioner, you indicated that that the records for 2009 and 2010 were not provided because there was a break-in?
That's what the client.
Yeah, something happened, but
I think it was a break.
yeah, I don't remember. She explains something happened with these records.
Okay.
I don't remember, probably fire or something happened, but we didn't investigate records.
So does that mean that we wouldn't have a police report or a fire inspection report?
We didn't pay attention.
We would have to ask her. I didn't ask her if there was a police report
what
or
was happening.
I would assume it should be.
Okay. Okay, all right. I was just more curious on why we didn't have those records, but I know that the department didn't impose a negligence penalty for lack of records, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Runner.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get through, at least in my thinking, the sales invoice issue that we used. So we basically established liability based upon their sales invoices.
Correct.
Okay, and what I heard at least the taxpayers say is that the sales invoices may total that, however, there was all that revenue or those dollars didn't come in for various reasons. Is that correct?
Yes. That's
okay. My question then is, normally that would then show up as bad debt.
It's cash basis. Well, then cash basis.
So you just netted it out.
Right.
Actually, tax return prepared on the cash basis, and bad debt is not reported on the cash basis on the tax returns.
And you kept you netted it out, but you kept no record of netting it out.
Actually,
you just had the dollar. You just counted the dollars as they came in the door.
We just pay attention to actual bank deposits.
You didn't have a set of invoices out there that you had that said paid on them, and then you didn't. You didn't ever match up your payments with your invoices.
No, we didn't do personally. We didn't do this investigation. We just investigate deposits, bank deposits, and.
Do you know who didn't pay you?
Definitely they would know, but we
Who's they? Who's the they?
Morrison definitely
the client would know.
Definitely, it's kind of straightforward information.
It's kind of hard for us to get our questions answered if you don't know the answer and the client isn't here.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
No more questions? Okay. Seeing no further questions, do I have a motion on the floor?
Support staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Ms. Harkey, a second by Mr. Horton to support staff recommendation. Without objection, motion carries. Thank you very much for coming today. Okay, Ms. Richmond, our next item, please.
Our next item on this morning's agenda is special presentations for the Employee Recognition Award Program for 2015-16.
Mr. Gao.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. David Gao, Executive Director. I am pleased to present the recipients of the 2015-16 Employee Recognition Award Cycle. Today, we will recognize the award recipients in the categories of customer service, extra mile, innovation, leadership, supervisory excellence, and teamwork. And at this time, I'd like to invite the members to come down and hand out the awards. And here to announce the recipients is Robert McPherson.
Chairwoman and Chairwoman, Vice Chair. Vice Chair, and District Order, and then David. All right. Just right. Morning, Chairwoman Ma and members. My name is Robert McPherson. Receiving an award in the Customer Service category, Susie Aragon, Tax Technician 3, District 1, Fresno. Nominated by 14 of her peers, Susie's approachability and commitment to doing her research necessary to provide a whole picture perspective make her a cherished and indispensable resource to all of her coworkers. Ravinder Sharma, Business Taxes Specialist 2, District 2, Fresno. Ravinder's taxpayer concurrence rate on protested audits has significantly reduced the number of audits that must enter the costly appeals process. Chris Moorhead, Business Taxes Representative, Out-of-State District, Sacramento. Known by one of his customers as My Tax Angel, Chris's manager received 10 emails and several calls from taxpayers during the year complimenting Chris on his patience, responsiveness, thoroughness, attention to detail, and outstanding customer service. Twee Nguyen, Tax Technician 2, Headquarters, Opus. Twee is always available to accept additional assignments, which directly contributed to an increase in the quality of customer service as evidenced by 10 compliments to managers and 0 taxpayer complaints. Susie, Ravinder, Chris, and Twee, please join the members for a customer service category group photo. Receiving an award in the Extra Mile category, Howard Lamb, Associate Tax Auditor, District 2, San Francisco. Howard's willingness to take on additional duties and workload while maintaining excellent customer service and professionalism have made him a primary go-to person when extra help is needed. Alba Sanchez, Business Taxes Specialist 2, Out-of-State District, New York. Alba's dedication to developing junior auditors, conducting audits and re-audits of very large taxpayers, and being an outspoken advocate for the New York and out-of-state district offices has cemented her legacy as a firm voice for fair, effective, and efficient tax administration. Lynn Whitaker, Business Taxes Specialist, Headquarters, Sacramento. On arrival, she assumed the most challenging work overseeing complex regulatory amendments, such as those related to mobile telephony services and responsible person liability. She's uniquely skilled at managing spirited conversations to ensure that they are productive and civil. Howard, Alba, and Lynn, please join the members for an Extra Mile category group photo. Receiving an award in the innovation category, Rosie Rose, Executive Assistant, District 2, Oakland. Rosie's efforts as part of a timesheet reporting work group led to a presentation to management on the use of technology and other resources to facilitate streamlining and process improvement to achieve greater efficiency and effectiveness. Julie Huber, Business Taxes Specialist 2, Headquarters, Sacramento. Julie's idea to make the cigarette and tobacco tax products taxes newsletter online only streamline the development and distribution process and save the BOE over $12,000 in just the current year alone. Rosie and Julie, please join the members for an innovation category group photo. Receiving an award in the leadership category, Priyadeep Kaur, Business Taxes Specialist 1, District 2, Fairfield. In addition to completing 48 audits in the last 2 years, training 4 new auditors, and helping to train a 5th, Priyadeep is always ready and available to help new auditors become more efficient and effective. Sherry Miller, Business Taxes Specialist 2, Out-of-State District, Sacramento. In addition to her regular duties, Sherry has volunteered to lead discussions to correct and improve audit procedures, which has resulted in improvement in the overall efficiency of the audit crew. Predeep and Sherry, please join the members for a leadership category group photo. Receiving an award in the Supervisory Excellence category, Steve Whalen, Audit Supervisor 2, District 1, Reading. Steve's incredible wealth of knowledge, perspective, and willingness to provide historical context make him an incredible person to learn from. His suggestions and encouragement had a direct impact on the elimination of aged audits in the Reading office. Lucille Delva, Supervising Tax Auditor 2, Out-of-State District, New York. Lucille's excellent organizational skills and work habits enable her to handle extra duties and responsibilities, including that of office training coordinator, recruiter, and advocate for the BOE. Kristen Cooper, Data Processing Manager 2, Headquarters, Sacramento. Kristen's performance under pressure is what sets her apart and where she excels as a supervisor. Whether managing difficult project deadlines or handling mission-critical applications, she consistently and effectively leads until the objective is achieved. Steve, Lucille, Kristen, please join the members for a supervisory category group photo.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1.
Receiving an award in the teamwork category, the Workforce Planning Group. This group completed the first ever comprehensive BOE workforce succession plan. The comprehensive report provides an executive overview of internal resources board-wide to help management tap into the institutional knowledge that could be lost to retirement and attrition. Here on behalf of the Workforce Planning Group, Adatola Adedipe. and Harold Davis. And Danette Delgado. And last but not least, Rochelle Hall. Workforce Planning Group, please join the members for a teamwork category group photo.
Here we go, big smile, 3, 2, 1.
And to close, also receiving an award in the teamwork category, the Dell Mass Refund Group. With existing systems unable to comply with a court-ordered mass refund, this group of 31 BOE employees developed and implemented a custom application to automate the mass refund processing of nearly 190,000 claims, totaling over $51 million. Here on behalf of the Dell Mass Refund Group, Camille Akpulonu. And Sandy Allen, Associate Governmental Program Analyst. And Monique Arroyo, Business Taxes Administrator 1. William Beneman, Associate Tax Auditor. And Leon Broussard, Accountant Trainee. And Priscilla Relosa Colonje, Tax Technician 3. Crystal Flores, Associate Governmental Program Analyst. Kathy Gibbons, Associate Tax Auditor. Kamaljit Gill, Associate Tax Auditor. Jeffrey Graybill, Tax Counsel 4. Harajender Gruwal, Business Taxes Specialist 1. Jeff Lawson, Senior Program Analyst, Specialist. Keola Roberts, Business Taxes Representative. Tula Sanchez, Tax Technician 3. Andre Skitt, Supervising Tax Auditor 3. Lynn Baker, Business Taxes Specialist 1. Del Mas Refund Group, please join the members for a teamwork category group photo.
I was gonna say, how are we gonna do this?
Okay, how about the chairs? We have to put the chairs front row.
Front?
Yeah.
Or the members.
Go back up there.
You want to go back up?
I think last time we did that at the dais for the big.
Yeah,
You wanna go up
that may be
and the
better.
Members sit down.
Okay.
Have the people around
Okay.
back, maybe 2 rows of people back. All right, here we go. Fill in around the back.
So, the taller people have like mine.
Always the tall people.
I know. How is it? Great. We can do a selfie.
Want them to stand in between?
Yeah, okay.
Want to stand in between us?
Yeah, stand in between. It works.
Just be sure you can see.
Stand in. Come on in. Watch out. Oh.
I'm so sorry. Volunteers.
Everyone see?
I see some of you hiding.
Oh, no hiding.
No hiding.
If you can't see him clearly, can't.
That's,
Yeah.
all right, here we go. Let's try it. I think I see all your faces, so. Do a couple. 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1. And one more. Say 3, 2.
Now if we could have all of the other awardees, this is where it gets fun, join the members up on dais also.
Okay. Need a bigger one.
Somebody go in the well? Some get in the well?
Some go down here.
Well, if we
Does that work?
Yeah,
wanna
this
do
is
that?
way too many. They're
Want to
not
have, is it too many?
clean.
I can get all of you.
Think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can fit you all up there.
Okay.
My seat down
Give
a
it a
little
shot.
bit.
3 rows.
Well, that's okay. You got a headshot. Put my seat down. So you can see.
It's up today.
Give me more space. I was
Oh, yeah.
like sitting low yesterday. That's okay. Come on back.
Fit one.
We've got room over here. Stick my purse in there. Stick it in. Come on over the side.
Can everyone see the camera?
Yeah, why don't you two switch there? Why don't you two switch? Yeah. Have her come in front of you and I'll see both your faces.
There you go.
y'all do? The green shirt, could you take just a baby step that way? Perfect, so I can see her. Okay.
Behind the scenes today. People don't get recognized.
See all the faces. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Another one. 3, 2, 1. Big smiles. And last one. 3, 2, 1. Here we go.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
This concludes our program. Congratulations to all of the awardees.
Yeah. Why don't you go Did you?
What's that reception?
Is there reception now?
Can we just break a little bit? I think we'll make general comments after. How's that?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, We come back? Yeah, just we'll go back into the...
That's going to be a full room back there.
Yeah, more than.
So they're going to go into recess now and come in.
Okay. About reception, and then we will come back.
My shoes.
I'm going to do a little behind the scenes. We have some socks, we have some shoes, we have... I want to take that guy's tie. With the
Are we recessing for 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah, 10, 15 minutes, sorry.
That's what she meant.
Let's take a 20-minute break. How's that?
Okay.
And we'll be back at 10:15.
Thank you.
I know. Ms. Richmond, please introduce our next item.
Our next item this morning are Chief Counsel matters. Item J, Rulemaking. J1, Readoption of Proposed Amendment to Diesel Fuel Tax Regulation 1432, Other Non-Taxable Uses of Diesel Fuel in a Motor Vehicle.
Okay, welcome to the department. Please introduce yourselves and begin your presentation.
Good morning, Chairwoman Ma and members of the board. I'm Kevin Smith from the board's legal department. With me today is Bradley Heller, also from the board's legal department. We are here today to request that the board vote to readopt the proposed amendments to Diesel Fuel Tax Regulation 1432, Other Non-Taxable Uses of Diesel Fuel in a Motor Vehicle. In December 2015, the board adopted the amendments and submitted the rulemaking file to the Office of Administrative Law. However, during OAL's review of the rulemaking file, OAL staff concluded that board staff's reference to data from other states and internal data in the initial statement of reasons did not provide a sufficient factual basis to support the safe harbor percentages contained in the proposed amendments. Therefore, staff has addressed OAL's concerns by adding documents containing the data from other states and internal data to the rulemaking file, and providing interested parties with an additional opportunity to comment on the new documents. Staff has not received any comments regarding the new documents, and staff has not made any changes to the amendments the board adopted in December 2015. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, any comments, questions?
Move adoption. We'll try it again.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Runner moves, Ms. Harkey seconds to adopt staff recommendation. Without objection, motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item, Ms. Richmond.
We have two Section 100 changes. Item J2, Sales and Use Tax Regulation 1597, property transferred or sold by certain nonprofit organizations.
Mr. Heller, please introduce yourself and then commence your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairwoman Ma, and members of the board. I'm Bradley Heller from the board's legal department, and I'm here to request that the board vote to authorize staff to complete Rule 100 changes to Sales and Use Tax Regulation 1597, property transferred or sold by certain nonprofit organizations. The changes make the regulation consistent with the 2015 enactment of Revenue and Taxation Code Section 6018.10, which provides that an all-volunteer fire department is a consumer, not a retailer, of all tangible personal property sold by it at retail if the profits are used solely and exclusively to further the volunteer fire department's purposes.
Okay, members, questions, comments?
Move adoption of staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Horton moves, Ms. Stowers seconds to adopt the staff recommendation. Without objection, motion carries. Ms. Richmond, next item.
Our next item is J3, Property Tax Rules 282, Temporary Certification, and 283, Permanent Certification.
Mr. Heller.
Thank you. Again, I'm Bradley Heller from the board's legal department, and I'm here to request that the board vote to authorize staff to complete Rule 100 changes to Property Tax Rule 282, Temporary Certification, and 283, Permanent Certification. The changes replace Rule 283's reference to the Department of Real Estate with a reference to the Bureau of Real Estate, to reflect amendments to Business and Professions Code Sections 10,004 and 10,005 made to implement the Governor's 2013 reorganization plan. The changes replace Rule 283's references to the Property Taxes Department of the Board with references to the Board's Property Tax Department to reflect reorganization at the Board. And the changes also replace references to regulation with references to rule throughout both rules because the regulations being referred to are commonly referred to as rules.
Okay, members, any comments, questions? Do I hear a motion?
Move adoption.
Mr. Runner moves adoption. Mr. Horton seconds to adopt staff recommendation without objection. Motion carries. Ms. Richmond, next item.
Our next item is item M, Other Chief Counsel Matters. M1, further discussion of resolution conferring powers on the executive director.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris.
Randy Ferris, Chief Counsel. This is further discussion with respect to the resolution conferring powers on David J. Gow as Executive Director that the Board adopted on April 26th. And the issue is whether or not there should be further amendment to that document with respect to the Board's oversight and approval of leases with respect to real property. So, and there is a proposal that would, and language that was provided, linked to the PAN, that would expand board approval to new office space for district offices. So that's the initial proposal.
Okay, Mr. Renner.
Yeah, I don't have any issue at all with the proposal. I'm just concerned in regards to the language itself, in regards to in terms of just trying to understand some of the what's in and what's out, I guess is the best way to phrase that. And as I reviewed that, I have no difficulty with at all with our board approving all real estate leases and just making it quite basically that simple, so that then we don't have to decide what's in, what's out. And so I did ask Mr. Ferris to actually come up with some language that would be simpler and do that. So I guess I'd like to at least have him read that language and then talk about the way that we would do that, or if there's some parts of it that people feel like shouldn't be approved by the board, but that's kind of where I would suggest. So, Mr. Ferris.
Okay. So in terms of the proposed amendment that's reflected in the document that you have before you, to expand it to all leases, I think the best language would be the executive director shall regularly report on significant changes to the use of existing lease space and shall obtain approval of the board prior to the execution of any lease documents with respect to real property. So that would include new office space, that would include leases that are being renewed for existing office space, that would include any amendment to a lease, and it would be all lease space regardless of its function.
Can I just ask, in regards to tease out for me the idea of the phrase significant?
Well, that has to do...
what I don't want to do is open a door that, all of a sudden becomes something that...
Yeah, the reporting aspect of the first part of the sentence is just dealing with our existing leases. If there's some change in how we're using lease space that's significant in the sense that if somebody moves from one office to another, that is a change in our use of lease space. I don't think the board needs to hear or wants to hear every time somebody changes their office or cubicle or something got rearranged. But if there's some sort of significant change in how the board is, the agency is using existing lease space, so that has nothing to do with new leases or extensions of leases or amendments of leases. That's just our ongoing day-to-day operations of how we're using lease space. The desire was if there's some sort of significant change with respect to how we're using the space that we have, that would be reported on the...
Would that be like if a department was moving from one lease space to another that you already had, a whole big department change or something like that?
Or if we had to do some remediation within headquarters and we had to use swing space to move a unit from one floor to another, something like that, that would be a significant change in use. So but that's all about reporting, just on ongoing day-to-day operations, how we're using our space.
Right. It's not an approval.
It's not an approval. And what I understand you to be interested in is perhaps expanding the board's oversight and approval with respect to a broader category of leases and amendments to leases and extension of leases on existing office space, that type of thing.
Ms. Harkey.
I kind of prefer the language that was suggested by the chairwoman. What I'm afraid of doing is getting into a rabbit hole where we are micromanaging the ED's position. I do think we have a problem with members deciding what they're going to do and costing the state money. I think that's very obvious in our budget negotiations. And so what I have asked for is actually a master plan of facilities so that we can plan going forward. And that would not, it would, because we're planning for an agency. I mean, we all have our constituents that we need to serve, but we are planning for an agency. And as a board, those are the decisions we should be making so that we don't end up with an office here, an office there, overstaffing here because another office opened up here and the accounts went and the people didn't go. I mean, you know, we've got to manage this like a real agency. And so I like the language that the chairwoman has suggested. I'm not so sure that I want to see every lease or switch, you know, moving a department in, an department out. I don't want to see that. Let me be perfectly clear. I think Mr. Gao we hired him to do that job, and I expect him to do that job. I don't think where Mr. Gao is concerned is where we're going to have the problem, but I think where we've had the problem is when we've had like redistricting and other things come up where, you know, it's questionable, and I understand, but I do think we could probably handle that without any politics involved if we did something on a master scale for the state and we all reviewed it. Because when something happens to one member up here, it happens to all of us. And I think that's the point that's not really understood. We can all sit here and torpedo this idea and go to the public arena and do this and do that and throw the dirt here, but the bottom line is the agency suffers and every member up here suffers. And I think that a lot of what's happened has been excellent. I think there are some questionable issues, but I think those of us that are new have had a hard time getting our hands around everything all at once. But I do plan on doing so. But one of the things that I really think we need to address is the office and the location. I think if we had something like that, we would have much more credibility with the legislature to let them know that we understand and that we are responsible as constitutional officers for the administration and that we will, you know, see to it that we're sticking to some kind of overall plan and not just a political plan. So I think that's the point they're making is, do we really need all this? And I'm not sure that any one of us actually can justify everything that's going on in everybody else's district. We probably know what we need for ours, but I think since if there's somebody that is anything that's in question, we all have to answer for it. So I would like to see a master plan of facilities be on the agenda, and also some kind of staging as to where we think we're going to have needs. I can tell you that right now in my Riverside office, we've been waiting months for elevators to be repaired. Those are DGS buildings. I'm not so sure we should all be in DGS buildings. I quite honestly think that if we can't get the repairs that we can get on the outside from the public, which we can, our buildings that we lease outside are absolutely well-maintained, fabulous. I think that the state buildings were probably, most of them are well-maintained initially, but we have problems getting lights replaced. And like I said, the elevator in Riverside has been out off and on for months. We have 3 elevators. Our staff is on the 10th and 11th floor, and we have 1 working elevator. And a couple, I guess a few months ago, or maybe even a year ago, my district administrator was stuck in an elevator broken for 2 hours. Wow. So that's not acceptable. And we're trying to deal with DGS to get this fixed, but it doesn't, I don't know what the progress is today, but I can tell you it has not been quick response. And in those instances, we ought to at least know about as a board, and we ought to be able to, I think, hire an outside contractor, get it done, and send someone a bill, because this is a problem. And I know our Santa Ana office that we now carry on our books for 8 years, that's in terrible repair, not ever going to lease, but we're paying lease on this, that we really ought to be able at some point say, hey, state, this is not ever going to lease, it's got issues, there's no repairs been made, we moved out of it because it was so bad. So at what point are we able to relinquish that lease and let the state dispose of the property? because as long as we're under an obligation to keep paying the lease payments to DGS, well, it's been 8 years. So what I'm saying is I think we need to, as a board, because I didn't understand all this before, and I'm sure not everybody did, but as a board, we need to know what our facilities are, which are active, which aren't, and then as a board, we could probably negotiate better with the state to take these buildings back, dispose of them, repair them, do this, do that, and those are my thoughts.
Okay, Mr. Horton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, the Board of Equalization has a long history in addressing these issues that have been permeating as the phone rings. And
it's pretty.
Thank you.
Spot
Very
on.
soothing.
Very soothing.
You know, it's
like
it's my daughter, and she's on top of technology, and so no matter how many times I could push it to say stop or go off, she's figured out a way to make it keep ringing. So anyway, my apologies, Madam Chair and members. You know, I like the amendments that Madam Chair has provided. I also like the conversation, the expression of philosophical expression by Member Harkey. And I think it's important that we give staff specific direction. But before doing so, let me share that the perception that members have control over some of these things is just a false perception. There are significant state laws that the agency has to follow. There's rules and procedure that the agency is required to follow in concurrence with the law. And the highest bid, transferring property, the authorization, and for the most part, DGS has the final say in many of these transactions, not the member, despite what may have been reported in the press. And then, of course, at the end of the day, the chair, the office, whatever, actually belongs to the people of the state of California. The inherent challenge is that we have somewhat deviated from existing policy. And so I think it's important that staff be given direction basically to return to current policy. And under current policy, as I understand it, is that if we incorporate in the amendment that the director shall develop proposals based on operational need, workload, permits, distribution of permits based on taxpayers' proximity to current district office, cost benefit, and related factors that determine the overall benefit to the state in order for us to establish any facilities whatsoever, distribution of permits, and understanding, trying to get back to what I think we attempted to establish some years ago is this concept of one BOE. And that is that we are just one organization serving, we're not four different organizations, wherein policy is established in one group different from a policy in another district. That's a violation of existing law to do that, to have that inconsistency. And, you know, my belief is that our greatest assets are our employees. And our greatest defense against that is the truth. And so when we use both of those as a premise for making decisions, as opposed to our political desires or political boundaries and so forth, at the end of the day, I think we get the results that's in the best interest of California taxpayers. They have no idea about what we think as board members and so forth. And that's why the legislature has established laws to ensure that continuity in the treatment of the taxpayers, to ensure that a taxpayer can go from San Francisco down to Los Angeles and expect that the taxpayer's Bill of Rights and the existing laws will be adhered to by every employee of the Board of Equalization. And in my, I guess, 30 years of experience, 97, 98% of the time, that is the case. is that the employees are following the rules. All of them are doing the best they can possibly do, and their goal is to do a good job, go home, and spend time with their family, come back to a wonderful place to work. And that's their goals and objective. Do the best they can while they're here, think about it a little bit on their way home, forget about it when they sit down for dinner, start up again the next morning. And starting at this organization at the age of 18, I've learned to value that experience. And I think if we return to that, where we extract that, I don't want to politicize it, but you respect that perception that there are different laws that apply in different districts, different people in different districts, and somehow it's going to make a huge difference. It's just not true. It's tantamount to saying that legislators make laws for the districts as they oversee. They don't. They function as a cohesive body to address the overall issues. And so I think if we incorporate language that gives the executive director some direction, and I also feel that the legislature has been clear that it's their desire that the Board of Equalization conducts a cost-benefit analysis to determine if we have established this office based on these criteria. They've all but said that: foot traffic, operation needs, workload, and things of that nature. And I think there's a whole lot of wisdom in following the direction of those folks that set your budget. You know, I think there's even more wisdom in following the common sense knowledge that has been established over the 137 years of this organization's existence. And so we go back to that one BOE philosophy, what we end up with is some very, very talented policymakers. Each one of these individuals are extremely talented and have skills that they bring that are very valuable, I think, to this process in a policymaker environment. And then we create an environment where the executive director can administer this organization, and the conferring powers all of a sudden have value. They have significance. And there is no interruption of that authority. And so I think we ought to basically return to those policies that have served us well over the years.
Okay, so I would just like to make a couple comments. I mean, we just got here, I just got here, and I think the district offices, we do a great job in doing outreach, education, you know, voluntary compliance. You know, I'm very, very impressed with that. I think when I got here, you know, I understood, you know, who works in my district, how many employees we have, how much our leases are, but I wasn't really privy to the whole agency, which is what I had a problem with, is not understanding the one BOE, right? And so I spent a lot of time trying to understand and ask for the one BOE number so that we could actually understand how many offices we have, how many leases we have in total, right? How many employees, what everyone's doing, like even here at headquarters. We were not privy to that. And so I would really like to go back to that, if that's how it was, to give the executive director the authority and the power to be more transparent. I appreciate the legislature, the assembly, and the Senate now, because I think they also didn't understand what is really happening with the agency, and so that's why they're putting a lot of pressure on us, is because we are not giving them information. We are not transparent, and I don't know whether we've been keeping that information or not, but we really should, you know, let them know, and we won't have these problems with the legislature. So in terms of, you know, the building and the leases, you know, whatever the conferring power is, you know, everybody should know here in this agency how many buildings we have, where all the employees are, how much it's costing us, instead of just this, you know, district by district need to know basis. So I'd like to get back to that, if that's how it used to be. I think it's healthy for the organization. Otherwise, it creates a lot of suspicion in terms of what one district is doing in another. It causes a lot of, you know, confusion, you know, jealousy, you know, rumors. But if everything is put out there in the public, then we don't have to second guess what is going on, either in the districts or in headquarters or even amongst our districts?
Let me just, a couple responses. One is, we had a master plan facilities. They were all our offices that we got established were part of a master plan of facilities. I think, well, actually not all, but by far most of them. That was part of a problem in regards to, I think, why we need to do a new one. The master plan of facilities was done as a result of redistricting. And as a result of that, this board was presented a plan, which included then where offices need to go, which ones needed to be changed, and as a result of the presentation of the master plan of facilities, then at that point, that was then used to be the plan then for the document that talked about then how do we do what's our staffing model, and so then we used those facilities to then drive then the staffing model, and the staffing model then was based upon accounts. And the counts were then by districts. And that's how we decided how many accounts or how many staff we would have, because that's how many accounts would have, and that's where these offices were. All of that was presented to this board. All of that was there. So the idea that somehow none of that took place just is not true. All of that was a very public discussion and a very engaged issue. So again, not this, I don't mean this board, I mean the prior board, excuse me.
Okay.
Although I do believe the staffing plan model actually was a part of the beginning of this board, but I knew the master plan was certainly that. So one of the things that I've continued to ask for is a new master plan. I think it's very important. I think it's important for a couple of things. Number one, I think it's important because we need to know not only what's happening in California, but I've got concerns about what's happening out of state. And so I think we do need to have a plan for that. For instance, in the master plan that was a part of what it is that was talked about before was, the idea of moving some offices around. We were going to go ahead and we have 2 offices in Riverside. The idea of doing a Rancho office meant that we were going to close the annex office because we wouldn't need it. I find out that was never closed.
What annex?
There's 2 offices there's an annex.
There's one in Palm Desert and there's one in Riverside.
No. Not there. We have a headquarters annex office in Riverside.
We have, yeah.
Right. And so
it's not part of.
So the fact that we all don't know what's really happening,
it's not part of your district.
Kind of part of the problem right here.
It's not a district.
Madam Chair, if I may.
No, let me finish.
All right.
No,
Mr. Runner.
I don't mean to
Mr.
imply
Runner.
that there's an extra office out there. What I meant to imply was we didn't have enough space and we needed some headquarters space, and so there was an additional office then identified as an annex headquarters office in Riverside.
Right.
So the idea was if you're going to go ahead and do then in the master plan that we had done, if you were going to go ahead and do then a Rancho office, you would close that office because then there would be enough place to put then the other staff into those existing offices. And the problem is, my understanding is that just was never done. So I think that's why we need to not only have a master plan, but we need to stick to the master plan in regards to that. So to me, that to me is where we got and how we got offices, how they were done. Again, all those offices were done not only done by our board in the sense of those reports, but then those went to DGS, they went to the Department of Finance, and all those were on the record. So the idea that anybody did anything that nobody was aware of just is not the case. That's why I believe the problem is one of perception. So I believe that's kind of why I kind of would like to say, hey, let's do all offices. The concern I have with this particular issue is, in this particular example, members' offices are not approved by this board. I think member offices should be approved by this board. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
It says it.
No, and that's why the language is hard. If you read this, it says the executive director shall obtain all approval of that member and board for all other office leases. And so the problem is that doesn't include members' offices. And I think that if we open up that door, it opens up, it doesn't appear that we want to be transparent. So that's why I like the clarity of just making it all leases. It just seems to me then there's no debate, there's no discussion. Now, I do agree. In fact, the first sentence is exactly the same as this one. And that is executive should report all significant changes to existing leases. So the proposal that at least I put on the table is exactly the same as this in that item. I'm not asking for changes of uses of facilities to come before the board. It's exactly the same sentence. So that's why I think that's important. Now, the other issue I would say, I'd like to bifurcate the discussion a bit, and that is, I would like for us to talk about facilities. I think it's a very big discussion to have, and I think it's one that everybody be fully prepared for, as to how accounts are assigned. I think that's a second discussion. And I think it's an important discussion. It ought to be, and if a member wants to put that on the agenda, then it ought to be put on the agenda. But, because again, let me step back a little historical again, because I have been here at least a little longer, not as long, but a little longer. And that is, when I got here, we had basically accounts were still assigned by district. And I think there's good reason for that, because those are the people who voted for me. And therefore, I think that makes sense. But at the same time, we had some issues of convenience, where members had agreements with one another in regards to, for convenience of the taxpayer, in terms of location, I'll take those accounts in my office. And those agreements were done between, for instance, prior to me, with Mr. Leonard and Ms. Steele, in regards to sharing in terms of where those accounts would go in that particular issue. It was also an agreement that was done between Ms. Yee and me at that point, followed up, in regards to accounts it would be Santa Barbara, because Santa Barbara came way down there. And so those were agreements, but those were agreements that members made. Because what they were, again, my feeling, and that's why I really don't want to go into this, I think it's something, my basic feeling is, I believe that we are elected by our constituents. And if I need to be engaged then as to where those accounts are, and then if I feel like for convenience of taxpayers, then there's an agreement between members, then at least I'm engaged in that. And that's the history. Now, again, I would rather have that discussion later, because I get really confused if we're going to do it by proximity, because I'll give you an example. I mean, Simi Valley is closer to Santa Clarita. Do we think all Simi Valley accounts should be transferred to Santa Clarita? I don't think so. And so that's where I get concerned about, because you're going to create a line somewhere. And that's why I think I just as soon have that discussion secondary, because I don't think it really needs to be a part of the discussion here in regards to how we do with leases.
No, but I think right now what we're talking
Ms.
about.
Harkey.
Ms. Harkey. If what we're talking about right now is adding language that gives the executive director some authority. And so to the extent we can add the phrase that the chair has suggested, I think it's clear. I think it's limited, and it allows for that further discussion. I do not want to see every lease, but I do want to see a master plan of facilities.
Yes.
And I think along with, once we get a master plan of facilities, then we can have that secondary discussion on the accounts.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of the second part. This is right now just conferring
Again,
powers.
I'm actually okay with this language if we can include members' offices.
Well, it
I'd be
says,
okay.
Shall obtain a member and board approval for all other.
See, the key word there is other.
So it probably should be then members' offices.
Right. I mean, see, and I think if I'm okay with it.
Just say all offices.
That's basically what I think my.
I would agree, all offices.
All
I mean,
offices.
shouldn't be this office or that office. And,
I see
and like
what you-
contracts, right now, we are getting each month contracts let out for, I think, $50,000 or more. And at least we get it. Our offices are looking at it. If we have questions, we can call, but more information is better than less information.
Right.
In my opinion. So I'm okay with having all offices, any significant changes in any leases to anything that's in our budget.
So the second, I'm sorry, but
Okay.
the second line, the executive director shall regularly report on significant changes to the use of existing lease space, and prior to execution of such documents for any new office space for a member, the executive director shall obtain approval of that member and board approval for all new office space.
That's still, it's just for any new office space, period.
I would.
Member or
all
districts, headquarters, I mean.
Yeah, it's just all.
All
new office space. So
Yeah.
if we're going to go out if we're relocating a division.
Yeah, we should know.
We need to know. Because I just found out about UTAS being in Riverside, probably 6 months ago, but there is an annex there for headquarters, and there's something else that's there with UTAS. So I think just kind of generally knowing where everybody is would be really nice.
Okay, Ms. Stowers.
Especially when you're in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ma. Just a couple of quick comments. I do support your suggested amendment, and you just made a comment about contracts over 50,000. I just want to just clarify that, yes, we are receiving those contracts over 50,000 for review, and we've been receiving those since March of 2015. We put that into the conferring powers last month just to formalize that process and basically formalize an existing policy. And I wanted to make that clear that it was not something that was new. With respect to Mr. Horton's comment to have the executive director to develop a process so that offices are open, closed, based on operational needs, workloads, and cost benefit, is my understanding that that is existing policy as well. And we should be following existing policy today and on a go-forward basis until the board decides to change that policy. So I would like to see this process that Mr. Horton talked about as part of the conferring powers so that everybody knows that this is our policy and we should be following it. If so, Mr. Horton could restate what he said.
And is our conferring document on the internet? Is this document on the internet?
This is linked to the PAN, yes.
Huh? No, but is it on our website?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
The one that's in place, once it gets in place.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Mr. Horton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, without this language, we are, even though it's a good idea to include the member's office, and I'm supportive of that, but we're returning to the status quo. Having the board authorize it without a conditional qualifier, you're returning to the status quo. The authority should be placed properly so, I think, in the executive director. The issue is that there are no lines. There should be no lines drawn. I certainly believe that elected officials ought to be able to represent the constituencies, but Member Runner ought to be able to represent his constituency, whether they're in New York, visiting New York, want to visit an office in there. He ought to be able to call and have some influence, which he does, I believe, in every office in the state of California. We begin to draw these lines is where we inherently get away from the one BOE concept, and we create a concept that says, because you have elected authority, that also gives you authority over the offices. And we should not have that authority. We should not have the hiring authority over the employees. We should not have that management authority over those employees. We should not set policy in those district offices. That should be all done collectively by the entire board via the executive director. And so the master plan that was drawn, there was dispute about it at that time. What happened was that we deviated from our policy, because if we didn't deviate from existing policy, we would not have district offices with 22,000 permits. We would not have district offices with foot traffic of basically 3 people a day. I mean, that wouldn't exist under the policies that have been driven by this agency over the years that I've been here. And so the inherent challenge in having elected officials is that if you don't empower a buffer between us, and that buffer being empowering the executive director, what happens is when the executive director engage with us individually, we basically say, this is what we want, and, the executive director has to kind of negotiate around that. And so I believe if we give him policy, we'll establish the buffer in order to protect our employees and protect this body. That's inherent in any government agency. So I believe it's important that we establish that policy that says every office, first says we need to evaluate our existing footprint to determine if we have been consistent with existing policy and determine the operational needs, the workload needs, and the proximity as it exists now, because as much as we sort of believe that the 9 million people we represent actually know us and actually care where we are located, they're more interested in where the closest office is. They're more interested in can they get the service, not am I crossing a line. I just don't think the people in Santa Barbara, when they cross a line to go to Ventura, they say, oops, I'm outside of, or I'm in Horton's district, so let me turn around and go up to San Jose. It doesn't happen. It's not the real world. And so I think it's in the best interest of our customer. It may not be in the best interest of from a political perspective, but it is in the best interest of our customers, which is California taxpayers, to have the offices located based on their convenience, which is indicative of how they use those particular offices, which is the reason that I think it's important that we give them, we set that policy, or reset, as Mr. Stowar has indicated, reset the policy, establish that, and regardless of these political boundaries, eliminate the boundaries altogether. And these are administrative offices that are ran by the administration and not by the elected officials. If we do that, we end up with a one BOE. We end up with an organization that is managed by an executive director. We end up with an organization where talented elected officials are establishing policy that is consistent with California law, that is uniformly applied throughout the state of California, has consistency, continuity, and synergy. And I believe if we do that, we are adhering to existing law. If we don't do that, we are in violation of the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights and a number of other laws that I believe we can cite. Let me reiterate this part. I think it's important that elected officials, if they have a constituent, but I've been assigned the Sacramento out-of-state office. What does that mean? You know what I mean? If any of the members have a constituent that's interfacing with the Sacramento State office, go visit it. Go and engage. Do what you have to do for that taxpayer. There are 5 offices that happen to be, or 3 or 4 or whatever, happen to be in my district, elected district. Your constituent comes over there, the district administrator, the employees, they're not following the law. As a policy, as a group, we need to then make sure through the executive director that that's happening. And so, again, let me just reiterate, I think it's important to establish that the offices will be set up, or we will evaluate based on the operational need, workloads, permits, taxpayers' base of proximity, only the base of proximity, only because it's their convenience that I think, not mine, their convenience, wherever is closest for them is where they should go. And if they don't get the services there, we should deal with the executive director to make sure that that does happen. But if you look at the customer service data for this organization, you'll find that this is an extremely responsive organization and that customers are receiving the service. It is an anomaly that a customer is not getting quality service with the Board of Equalization. Every study, Little Hoover study, the Hill study, every study says the Board of Equalization is an exceptional organization statewide, one of the best in the nation. And there is no distinction, there is no lines, and there shouldn't be.
Okay, Mr. Ferris.
Just to clarify, the current language of the resolution, as adopted in April and as proposed to be amended, completely empowers the executive director with respect to lease decisions. That's why the power of execution is in the executive director, not the members. And so it is the executive director pursuant to whatever overall oversight direction the board wants to give with respect to criteria. And we've been talking about existing policy, and we're under the leadership of the executive director, staff is preparing an update to facility master plans and will be engaging in a public meeting with the board on the criteria and some of these other issues about accounts and one BOE and all this very good discussion is all going to be part of that public discussion that will happen within months as that document is prepared and deliberated on by the board. But this language here that we're talking about is just a check and balance. It's the executive director is empowered to do this and to execute these documents, but as a final step, after the executive director has made decisions and has a proposal on lease space based on board policy, the final check and balance is for the members to approve it.
Yep.
So. I want that to be clear. This language completely empowers the executive director, and the board is functioning in an oversight check and balance with the final approval. And it sounds like, to harmonize everything that I've been hearing, it sounds like the most elegant way to amend the chairwoman's language would be to strike the word "other."
Right.
Right. And I think for reading comprehension, even though it's not grammatically required, I would add a comma on the last line, on the fourth line after member. So it would read, leading into it, the executive director shall obtain approval of that member, that's for personal board office space, comma, and board approval for all new office space.
Yeah.
So that would be my recommendation for amending it in terms of the discussion I've heard.
Yeah, this is just a conferring powers. This is not an overall goals, objective policy. We have an existing policy, as Chairman or Chair Emeritus Horton has said. We have an existing policy. So when we come back with our master plan is when we can have further discussions on the rest of all of that. Because I think right now our policy it's based on need and permits and whatnot. But I think the problem has been is that as we have executive directors change, so does their feeling of a mandate. I mean, we cannot just ignore that this is not a political office. It is. The people that serve us serve by the vote of 3 or more. And I don't think we can just throw that on the carpet and say, okay, well, he's just going to do what he's going to do, because if David Gow does not do what the board likes, the board will replace him. If Randy Ferris doesn't do what the board likes, the board will replace him. And so I think we cannot ignore that. And so I think we want to be sure that we have the success of the people that we think are good representatives for the organization, good management material, good administrators. We want them to be successful. And I don't want to completely tie their hands and have them going like this. I want them to know specifically what they are to do. And with this board right now, the best thing specifically is to bring it back to the board, because otherwise it'll be in the newspaper somewhere. So what I'm trying to do is save all the chaos. And I think that, we can go into something that might be different, because what Ms. Bridges saw is her duty to do as opening offices might be different than Mr. Gow's right now. So all I'm saying is that I think the existing policy is in place, that Chairman Horton or that Member Horton wanted. It's already there. I think that Ms. Bridges probably thought that she followed that policy. Now we're looking at maybe we might want to make some changes to interpretation, so we want a master plan so we can all see it. But in the meantime, we want our executive director to be able to function and to know what his marching orders are. And his marching orders in this are very clear, that, if a member wants to open an office, he's to go to that member and then come to the board for approval. If all office space that he chooses to lease from this point on, come to the board for approval. So right now, that's where we're at.
Right. And none of those would be a surprise, because they all should be then part of a facilities master plan.
Right, and then the facilities master plan we can get into, determination, and that's where I think we're already, as I understood you to say, Member Horton, we've already got that policy. It's existing policy, so I don't think we need to
Member Harkey,
enumerate it.
As the Chief Counsel has articulated, that's the status quo.
Right.
We're not changing anything. The status quo is the executive director has that authority currently. We're not doing that. The challenge that we have is that the executive director is placed under the political pressure to adhere to the will of elected officials within their own respective district.
Always is.
The way we alleviate that is give specific directions by this body as to how that assessment should be made, and then give him the professional courtesy, discretion to be able to make those decisions and evaluation. Otherwise, what we see is what comes before us is he's had a discussion with a member expressed his desires, and those desires are now coming before us without any sort of conditions or policies that has been established by the board. So we're back to making decisions on a transaction by transaction basis if we were to say we are just going to adhere to existing policy, then we are no longer, otherwise we are caught in the status quo where we have an executive director that is following the direction of individual members. Those members make a decision. That decision is codified and then brought to the entire body, and we're discussing those decisions every time. If we make those decisions based on established rules and criteria, as we have done historically, and then the executive director has direction, he has a policy that he can adhere to, he has a policy that protects him from the political pressures, and he no longer has to comply with that. Now, this is as it relates to district offices. I mean, as it relates to procurements and things of that nature, there are a whole nother set of laws and that's why I don't think the procurement issue is an issue that the board needs to look at on a regular basis, because all we need to say is that follow the law. And so being engaged, currently I'm not engaged in that process. I have no idea what the DGS has signed off on, and I don't feel that that's my responsibility. I'm a policymaker, not an office in charge of acquiring offices and furniture and all that type of stuff. The existing law is clear. It provides them those directions. Without that, these amendments, in my opinion, is just restating the status quo and creating an environment that we're currently dealing with. The other inherent challenge we have, members, is that we've got to, I think, we've got to create a level of credibility where the legislature believes that we're going to govern ourselves. And if we don't do that, then the perception is we need governing. And so the legislature has, from my perspective, they're clear. And I think we ought to just have this, go back to the policy of saying our best defense is the truth and information. If we provide that every time they're asked, this organization is an organization where every 92 cents invested in this organization, we generate $100. $60 billion for the state of California. Any corporation that's on the stock exchange, we would be concerned, about, you're opening an office. In the case of Mr. Runner's office, you open an office, it costs X amount of dollars, but that's an efficient office in his district. It's generating billions of dollars for the people of the state of California. It's servicing constituents. It's handling and dealing with constituents' problems that the legislature is sending us all the time and creating all the time. So is that an issue, or is the greater issue the productivity, the effective, and the effectiveness and the responsiveness of those agencies? And if we're not clear, if we defer this and say we're going to bring it back, we're going to discuss it, we're going to negotiate, and it's going to come back a month later, 2 months later, and all this process. This is, from my perspective, we need a policy in place. And even though I believe the existing policy does exist, in the read of the one document that I could find that articulated these policies, it actually said both. It actually says this is one way and this is another way. And so I think we need to provide a level of clarity in addressing that. And I would make a motion that we amend this to have this extra language in there, because I think it's important to provide that direction and policy security for the agency.
Thank you. So I also think, this language is still confusing. Why can't you just make it simple? Like,
Like, start with the one I gave,
All-
you wrote for me.
Yeah, I mean, basically, all leases, period.
All leases.
Significant leases, if you want to call it
Extension of,
significant.
existing,
extension, just has to
space.
come to the board. That's it. I mean, forget about comma, members' offices, comma, headquarters, comma. I don't know what all that is.
so
It's
that-
not Ducky Bunny to me.
Well, this is not.
Let me put it that way.
Believe me, when we start looking at this, it's not going to be so ducky bunny either. I just want to interrupt. I don't want to see extension of leases. I really don't, and I would object to that.
Okay.
We have to have some powers conferred on the executive director. He has to be able to function. This board is not going to be able to review everything while one member's out doing campaigning, the other member's out taking a vacation, something else going on. These guys are sitting at their desk trying to function. And so what I want to see is conferring powers that are conferring powers, okay? You have the authority to renew leases. David Gow should have that authority. We need to, and I don't think this is stepping it at all by saying bring it back. I don't see the language that Mr. Horton is trying to propose. I would like to see it before I say, yeah, add it in. Because I don't necessarily think it belongs in conferring powers. I think it belongs in a policy. And he says it's already in the policy.
I think that's fair, Member Harkin.
That's what I want to do. I would like to take this second language, and so all new office space. That's what I am proposing, and I will make a motion for that, to use that second language.
Well,
And just to get this moving, and then we can, if we don't like all of the ins and outs of what the existing policy is for deciding, I don't think any of us are planning new office openings right now, but since the legislature's questioning our budget and axing us, but if we are, I think that would fall under here, we'd be able to look at it.
Yes.
So when we get our master plan, our actual master plan, then we can have the big discussion as to how we want to situate these, what this board would like to do, and what extra powers we would like to confer on the ED based on a new master plan. And if the existing policy is in fact existing policy, please bring it back to us next meeting so I can read what existing policy is and where it's conflicting, maybe one place or the other. Maybe at that point, we can put something together that makes sense, that meets Mr. Horton's request, and that the rest of us, and Ms. Stowers, and that's a separate topic to me, because I don't want to get into adjusting a whole new policy right up here.
Well,
I don't have the data.
Okay,
and so I want the existing.
And I would also like to say, I have not seen the master plan. Nobody has given it to me.
Well, we're doing a new one. We're doing a new one.
Well,
Okay, but I'm just suggesting that when new board members come, if we are following some policy or plan, that we have an input in it, and I have not seen it. You know, we got this staffing model that I couldn't really understand with lines and arrows and dots all over it. I mean, that to me was not an acceptable way when I came in to say, this is the staffing model, follow it. Well, we didn't really have any sort of input in it. We didn't understand the justification, how everything is happening in the BOE. So that's how we kind of got to a lot of the confusion and the tensions among us, is because it wasn't transparent. We don't see the big plan. We don't know what passed in the last board and what people are following and whether these policies are being followed. I mean, all we know is we're voting on a conferring documents right now. So that's what we're doing based on what we think the executive director should or shouldn't do, or what their powers are. Talking about policies and master plans, I mean, I wasn't here, so I'm not sure what the plan is, and we would like to see it again, and I think it's healthy to have that discussion here in the board chambers amongst everyone, since we can't talk to each other for Bagley-Keene reasons, but then the staff also that are sitting out there and watching, they also understand what's going on. So, if there's a master plan, bring it. If there's no master plan, then someone has to develop it, right? I mean,
Right.
that's kind
Okay,
of what we're trying to say.
Let me wrap this up and make a motion and see, and I'll bifurcate it in 3 parts.
Well, before that, Ms. Harkin, let me just share
Mr.
that.
Horton.
Share that. It seems like this is going somewhat in the right direction from my perspective. I don't want to create a facade by saying I'm amending the conferring powers and accomplishing anything that hasn't already been accomplished. the existing conferring powers confers these powers to the executive directors, these amendments become a facade that we are actually addressing a policy issue or a policy concern. And I don't think it's inherently wise for us to perpetuate that. So I would suggest that we just put this whole, the executive director has these powers already, no matter what we write in here. The only power that the executive director does not have, to my knowledge, is as it relates to the member's own office. And so if we want to confer that power, I think there's some wisdom in that. And even that, the executive director has the power. The member just participates in the selection. He has the power to make the decision. And so if you want to eliminate the authority for members to participate in that, there's a lot of wisdom in that too, because why should it matter? I mean, it actually belongs to the people of the state of California, not to us. But to tinkle with this, or ducky bucky with this at this time, maybe we put it over till we can have that policy discussion.
I don't want to put
No, I don't want to put this over.
We already assigned powers, and we're trying to amend it so it's a little more.
I want to get this off the table.
Well, why don't we ask the chief counsel?
Well, here, let me.
Does he have these powers already? Or are we accomplishing anything new?
What this language does is right now, the full board has to give final approval to an executive director's decision with respect to new office space for headquarters operations, right? What the full board did not have to give the final approval with respect to district office space. That was left. The check and balance was the individual member for that district would have to give the approval, but the full board didn't have to give the approval. So the language that's being proposed here would, and as amended by, proposed to be amended by Vice Chair Harkey, it also brings in the board member's personal office space as well for board approval, and district office space for new office space. And the complicated language that's there that we're talking about with commas and things like that, what that does is it would prevent, and I would assume you guys would appreciate this, it would prevent a majority of the board from deciding to give what the personal office space is going to be for an individual member over that individual member's objection, right? So the way this is, so if a board member is getting personal office space, they have to sign off on it too, personally. But then the full board also has to approve it. Right. So that's what's happening in this language. It is a change. It's a substantive change. It's not a facade.
Important change. It's an important change, I believe, and I believe.
I mean, I'm supportive. I'm supportive of that, as Member Harkey has articulated. The facade is that we're actually solving the issue of the policy that establishes these district offices, and we're not. And so we see these reports that, oh, the board took immediate action to address a policy that has been existing for almost 2 years, or laws that have been in place, and that gives off the impression as if though something is inappropriate or something was done wrong.
Yeah.
And so let me be clear about that.
Right.
I mean, as it relates to the changes, the good changes, I believe that should be existing policy, and I believe that should be the policy that we should have been following all along. But if you want to codify it somehow in this document, what exists in my mind, I'm okay, and I would second that, Member Harkey. But to do that without addressing the policy issue that has been expressed here is a facade.
Okay, let's clear up the facade.
And we would hope that we would bring it back.
Thank you, yes.
Deal with it.
So let us bring that policy discussion back, put it on another agenda, and have a full discussion. But right now, we're talking about the conferring powers document because it has been confusing. People have different interpretations. The press has interpreted it differently. So do you have another motion, Ms.?
Yes, I have a motion that to adopt the language, The executive director shall regularly report on significant changes to the use of existing lease space and prior to the execution of such documents for any new office space for a member, the executive director shall obtain approval of that member and board approval for all new office space.
Second.
Then-
Are you willing to add a comma after member on line
Yes.
4?
Yes,
Yeah.
comma.
I would second that motion with the caveat that we provide some
Yeah, well, that's, now that's,
specific
I'm going to make a
direction.
second motion.
Okay.
Okay, so that's number one.
What, can we vote on that? Should we?
You want to vote on that?
Yeah, why don't we vote on that?
Okay, motion
Does
so
everyone
made.
understand the motion?
Say it again, please.
What does that mean? In plain English, Mr. Ferris,
In plain English,
with the comma.
it means that all new office, leases for all new office space have to be approved by the full board. And whenever a member is getting personal office space, that individual member also has to approve it.
You know,
And
let
the
me
whole-
tell you, there's another public advantage here, and that is when we, because again, it's not only us board and some of the criticism that is sometimes coming, it's not only us board that approves it, but that means the public is aware of it. That means the legislature is aware of it. So when we talk about it being, you know, kind of the open transparency issue, it's not just transparency for us.
Public.
It's transparency for the public at that point as then these things move forward. And I think that's the advantage of it being in as part of the policy issue.
And part of the discussion should also be that, I mean, it's the intent of the board to move out of this building, to have a campus. It is not the desire, in my opinion, of the board to have these different spaces all over the place. We would prefer a franchise tax board type facility where, and it's not been the board that has prohibited that. It has been, you know, because we require legislative authority in order to accomplish that objective. So I think it's important that we go forth with that conceptually as well.
Okay, so do we want to vote
Yes.
on the first?
Okay, so the first motion, are you okay
Second.
with it?
Yes.
Okay, so Ms. Harkey made a motion, Mr. Horton second for that amended language, that paragraph with the comma after member,
And
right?
striking the word other.
Striking
And
the word.
striking other. Okay.
The second motion I will make is for for staff to bring back for board discussion on the next agenda, up the policy for establishing offices that Mr. Horton has so referenced. And if there's any confusion in any other part of a manual anywhere, to please bring that, and we will try to reconcile that. If we could have it before board hearing date, so that we can all look at it and gather input of staff's recommendation if there needs to be changes. So my motion is to bring back the policy on location of offices and requirements for office space. Is that?
Well, let me, I think, is the office space part of a master plan of facilities, do you think?
Well, then my third motion is that the staff continue to prepare, which is undergoing, the master plan of facilities, and bring that back as soon as possible for the board review.
Yeah, members, I don't think, I'm speculating here, my apologies, Mr. Runner, if I'm not right. I don't think we can have a master plan without giving some directions on how to prepare that plan. And so inherently, the discussion about the policy, whether or not districts
That
should
makes
be
sense.
established based on political boundaries or based on operational needs, workload, and proximity for the customer convenience, is a policy that we need to discuss, because that policy would then guide the ultimate master plan, which may end up with the consolidation of offices, or the creation, which is something we should probably talk about, of satellite offices that are far less expensive, but yet serves the purpose of having a smaller facility to accomplish.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think the first step that the board has to deal with is how do you assign accounts? I mean, I think that's the fundamental first issue, because I think at that point, then that does then dictate then office locations, all those other issues. So I think the idea of having to come back and have a discussion about,
Policy.
the discussion of how are accounts assigned. Is a good discussion to have. I'm a little concerned about, by the time, when we say the next meeting, the next meeting means that people have got to start working on this, be prepared, and then give it to us 10 days in advance. So that, I'm just concerned about actually
I
being
guess-
fully vetted in that amount of time. And it seems to me that this is such an
Mr.
important
Gal,
issue.
maybe you should come up.
If
Mr.
this is
Gal.
such an important issue, I'd rather get it right than get it a month early.
I think you understand the workflow and priorities and what is on your
Yes, thank you for the opportunity
agenda.
to talk on this matter, because I have been giving it some thought, and I would like to, I think as Vice Chair Harkey is describing, is to come forward. I think we need to establish what is the criteria currently, and do we have anything? We're looking through historical records and trying to establish all of that, and I think we need that foundational knowledge and understanding first. And so we could present that to the board as far as, here's the criteria that we've been able to document. If there is some kind of a master facility plan that was, I'm going back to 2010 and looking into board, what has come to the board kind of things, or what has gone to the legislature. So we are aggressively looking for, at these items. And I think that would be a good place to start for the board to understand. So basically the existing policy, and if there was some kind of if there is, what that facility master plan might be to set the table. I think that the members also are talking about a very fundamental, how you're going to establish offices.
Mm-hmm.
Is it based, under current policy, or how we've been doing, foot traffic and those kinds of things? And then, and the issue of constituent and equalization elected boundaries. Those are a couple fundamental things that I think this board, should help set the policy on for the staff. And then ultimately, from those things, we could develop then a master facility plan going forward, because leases are as you're fully aware, constantly either expiring or being having to be renewed. We are constantly looking at offices and are they practical? Is the state office the place to be, or a private building, and how those facilities, are they current, or do we need something different? A lot of issues. So I think this is basically like a 3-step process, as Vice Chair Harkey has described. What is current landscape, policy, and structure? A recommendation then to the board, and for the board to establish the criteria for doing those, and then going forth with that criteria and looking at what kind of facility master plan we can develop.
Okay.
The question is, how
long will it take?
Yes,
Yeah.
so I believe in June, we could at least bring the current landscape and what we have established.
Just start thinking about it.
Okay, and so that will then be very transparent in what's the current lay of the land, so to speak. Okay, so I think that's a fair enough thing to do. I think I have expressed a desire, if, the criteria, so I think that would be June. I think July could possibly be where the board establishes that criteria based on, that would give the board time to absorb all of that and to then come back in July with some kind a criteria recommendation. And then we could discuss the idea of boundaries and foot traffic.
So the idea is in June, you think you're prepared to bring kind of a historical perspective
Right,
and
a report.
kind of a report of where we are.
And I'm not even asking, I don't think at that meeting for an
decision.
action item. It would just be a report, I believe.
And then that would then drive then a discussion item then the following month.
Correct.
Okay.
And then ultimately, I think it will take from that some time to develop a facility master plan.
Right.
That's going to be, but in the meantime, we do have we are going to have to bring forward any leases if they have conferring powers. If we've got some immediate needs, that whether offices are having to change facilities at all, that will be coming forward under the conferring powers.
I just want to make one comment.
Yes.
Since we're responding, thank you. Since we're responding to the conference committee anyway, we're going to have to do that in the budget conference committee. This is all very timely.
Yes.
And so I think that what we're doing here is important, but how we kind of understand how we organize is going to be very important. And then we're having to provide, in essence, a master facilities plan to what we've got right now to the legislature. So I think this is all, it's all dovetailing. It will all help us respond.
And if you can also add, all of our bond covenants and all of our obligations, like how, for this building.
For the
'cause there's-
headquarters facility as
Yeah,
well.
there's
Yeah,
a
why
lot of
can't we get out of
confusion. And then, when we possibly, and whether we
They
are
borrow the
possibly talking about other options with other folks currently or not. I mean, we also have to kind of make that decision.
So are we clear on that, that the second is that in the next meeting, we'll bring back the policy? That's my motion. We bring back the existing policy and.
Yeah, report as to what we.
Yeah, Madam Chair, let me ask.
Mr. Horton.
I see our ledge director's here. What's the timeline on the budget process and that entire process? And not to say that the members,
be adopted.
we have to adhere to that, but just out of
Yeah.
curiosity, having all legislators up here, I'm sure we all know, but just to get it on the record.
Good afternoon, Mr. Horton, members of the committee, members of the board, rather. The deadline for passing the budget is June 15th, but it's unclear what the timeline is for the conference committee to make their decisions. It depends on their level of agreement and the outcome.
There's a constitutional established timeline. You want to share that?
June 15th.
And so if they go beyond that in finalizing the budget, they have issues they have to deal with?
Their pay accumulate.
Correct.
So the odds are pretty good that they're going to want
The odds
to.
are pretty good that they'll be done by June 15th.
June 15th, okay. So there is nothing happening after that. I only share that, members, because I think it's, inherent upon us to be conscious of that, given the adjustment to the Board of Equalization's budget. I think we have an opportunity to clarify some of the misconceptions and flat-out lies that exist in order to be able to have the legislature have a much better understanding of the value of this organization. When they're looking at cutting our budget, they should actually be, in my opinion, looking at expanding our budget and providing greater compensation to our employees, but this is a discussion for another day. But I think we get there by articulating our value and resolving these sort of issues. So, I mean, Madam Chair, you have the authority to call a special meeting to allow us to come together. I've distributed, what I think, a pretty comprehensive proposal, and would encourage all members to take a look at that, provided it to the Executive Director, may be helpful in expediting, and can provide you with a copy of all the historical data related to this subject matter, if that would be of any assistance in expediting the process. But I defer to the majority of the board. That's just one
Well,
person.
there's a motion to bring the policy back at the next meeting. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Any objection to that?
I'm just going to discussion.
Ms. Stowers.
Sorry. Timeline. I think what Mr. Horton is, you're expressing a concern that if we're just going to bring back the existing policy at our June 14th meeting, we're not going to be taking any action prior to the budget being signed. So are you expressing a concern that we need to take action sooner than later?
Well, if not take action, I think we need to communicate to the general public what the board policy may very well be. There are certainly different philosophies out there. I agree with the legislature's philosophy. I agree with our historical philosophy, policy, and if we're going to deviate from that, which I also agree with the theory of the majority rules, and we'll adhere to that, but if we're going to deviate from that, we ought to communicate that sooner than later, and if we're not going to deviate, we ought to communicate that sooner than later. But if we want to put it over to the 14th,
Might I just make a suggestion?
you know,
And so my follow-up question, you indicated that the chair has the authority to call a special meeting?
An additional regular
in
meeting.
addition to the regular meeting.
Into the regular meeting?
Call it what we want to call it, but.
Okay.
May I just make a comment, Chairwoman?
Madam Chair?
Yeah. See, the problem with calling an additional meeting is that that gives the staff more to do. And right now, they are backpedaling to answer to the Assembly. And I don't mind if we want to get involved, and I have actually requested to fly up here and get involved. And I'm requesting certain items that are being analyzed. I'm personally doing this because I want to see the spreadsheets, I want to understand it, so I can go hoof over in the Assembly and in the Senate if need be, so that I can, kind of get to the members that I know and say, this is the deal, this is where we're going, before it gets to conference committee. I'm not going to wait for us to all decide we have time, because I think each member has a different, but right now we've got 4 items that we really need to justify. And so I am trying to get all the data on the 4 items. And so I don't want staff pulled and to try to prepare something for us and all the PowerPoints that they're going to end up ultimately having to substantiate. I think time is of the essence, that we just cut them free to deal with the budget issues. And I will interface with you happily, Member Horton, to be sure that we get the substantiating data and the right things, because I've requested it. So I just want to be sure that regardless, because we're not changing a policy, that the budget is done. Now we just have to justify what we need, which is basically bodies and funding that has been taken, $11 million. And so those are the 4 issues I want to concentrate on. The policy, I think we need to have back here because we all need to see it, and we need to discuss it. And I think that can readily happen June 14th, because that's not going to impact what the Senate or the Assembly decides to do with us.
And I would also say, since you are interfacing with the legislature, you also come back and let us know, as a board and the public, what it is that they've been asking, what information we've been submitting to them. Because it just depends on who's engaging and who's talking to you, and whether you're going over there for the committee and someone's giving you feedback, but we don't really know what has been submitted as an organization, whether they've approved it, whether they denied it, and what is the real result after all these budget conferences. Because this year, last year, I know that Senator Runner and I went over there to talk about, the outreach budget, but it wasn't as significant as what is happening this year. And so they're requiring a lot of information from us. I know it's keeping you guys busy, like Ms. Harkey said, so we don't really want to distract you right now, because we do have to respond to them regarding our needs, why we're asking for these positions, why they're important, what these people all do, so that they don't cut our budget. But eventually, maybe next month you can bring it back in terms of what it is we presented, put it out there, tell us what the final verdict was in terms of what they decided, what was necessary, what's not necessary. And in the meantime, I know the board members are all going to be working individually to defend our agency. But we also need that backup, as Ms. Harkey said, is we can't go over there and just say we need them. We have to say, hey, these are what these folks do. It's very, very important. This is why it's justified that they should not cut it.
Madam Chair, if I may, let
Mr.
me
Horton.
also encourage members that we not get out in front of our professionals, that there needs to be one message, and that one BOE concept needs to be formulated. Currently, there are 2 messages when it comes to this, and I think we need to be clear about that as well, and honest about that. And I think it's also important that, and I know Mr. Gao is working on this already, is that, he pulled together his team, and his team analyze the concerns, and then come up with a comprehensive response to those that provides information such as return on investment, cost-benefit analysis of each of, the things under concern. External affairs, for example, the Board of Equalization's greatest enforcement tool is education. Our 97% compliance rate, if it goes down 10%, that's $600 million lost to the state of California on an ongoing basis. So interfere or with that delicate formula that exists, and that balance exists in public safety, exists in taxation, and so forth, where you have the combination of enforcement, aggressive enforcement on the underground economy, compliance, assisting taxpayers to comply and avoid penalties and interest, and education, important part. And then incrementally, the educational component, I believe, is the most important part, but is also the least expensive, but yet still the most effective part. And historically, the agency has actually reduced the cost of external affairs by virtue that the district offices in the past would do 2 to 3 events a month per district office, and we're nowhere near that, and nowhere near that cost in utilizing state facilities. But this is a message that has to be communicated to the legislative process, and I believe if we do it effectively, what happens is, with the members having 12 years instead of a shorter term, the historical knowledge exists. The other thing is, none of these questions are new. These questions have been asked and answered over the last, for the most part, over the last 10 years or 8 years that I've been here, and many years prior to me being here, and they've been answered in a way that the legislature has responded with granting BCPs, granting the settlement division, granting call centers, and acknowledging the value of this organization and saying we want to make greater investments, because nowhere on the stock market can you get such a deal where you put 99 cents in and you generate $100. An organization is generating billions of dollars. In my opinion, the most valuable organization in the state. So,
I think Guido did a pretty good
members, I think once we have that that message, then we can carry the message. Otherwise, we're carrying different messages right now as to what we believe is the truth.
Okay.
Okay.
There's a motion and a second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second.
The motion is,
The
repeat,
motion is
please.
to bring back the policy at the next board hearing meeting for discussion, or for presentation and discussion.
Right.
Okay.
Good part.
Okay. Without objection, motion carries.
The next part is for the staff after the policy to bring back a master plan as soon as practical.
That sounds fine. Second.
Okay, there's a motion, second. I guess we can talk about dates, realistic dates later on, and then we can agendize it.
Yes.
Okay?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Without objection,
Thank you.
motion
And-
carries.
And I would like to add just a comment for this board, that each of us has relationships in the legislature, and that it would be beneficial for each of us to figure out what area the staff would like. While they're hitting the staff or they're approaching staff, each of us maybe take a member or two and try to get, try to create a better understanding of what we do, because I think we all have relationships over there. And I think it's very important that we kind of repopulate the legislative atmosphere with what it is the board does, because so many people don't know. Even people in the district don't know, and the legislature really doesn't know. They think we're FTB and that's it, and it's just really, most don't understand that when they assign a new tax or a fee, we get to implement and collect it, and it takes a little bit of work and it takes some people. And so I think once you present all of the different items that we deal with, how we deal, then the staffing levels become clear. Also with the legislative cuts, the whole legislative unit, I think it's going to be very important for us to explain why it is that, the legislative unit generally works for the legislature. They determine the cost of implementation. We provide data to them. We don't necessarily provide it for the members. We provide some analysis for member proposals, but the bulk of the legislative unit is really working for the legislature on the BOE dime. So I think those are the types of things that need to be explained, and I will be happy to get into the personnel and the leaves and stuff like that, because I think I really understand that now. And I think we've got a good story to tell, as Member Horton says. I think we all know we have a good story to tell. Return on investment's huge, but we are accountable, and so I think it's important that we be able to justify our existence.
Sounds good. Can we move on to another item? Members?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, Ms. Richmond, please call the next item.
Our next item is the administrative session. Item N, consent agenda. Item N1, we have retirement resolutions for Lynn Bartolo, Merle R. Dino, and Cynthia L. Thomas.
Thank you. So I would like to extend my appreciation, our appreciation to these retirees for their dedicated service to the Board of Equalization. Lynn Bartola recently retired after 37 years of state service. She began her career with the BOE in 1978 as an office assistant in the Oakland office. She promoted to Program Technician 2 in 1980, Program Technician 3 in 1982, Business Taxes Representative in 1985, Business Taxes Compliance Specialist in 1990, Business Taxes Compliance Supervisor 2 in 1991, Business Taxes Compliance Supervisor in 1995, Business Taxes Administrator 2 in 2005, and Chief of the Excise Tax and Fee Division in 2006, where she continued to serve as Chief of the newly formed Special Taxes Policy and Compliance Division. In 2014, she became Acting Deputy Director of the Special Taxes and Fees Department, and in 2015, she assumed the duties of the Deputy Director of the Sales and Use Tax Department. So she's had a long and illustrious history here. We wish her well. Merle Dino is retiring after 31 years of state service. She began her career with the BOE in 1995 as an office assistant 2 in the Oakland office. She promoted to Program Technician 1 in 1985, Program Technician 2 in 1987, Program Technician 3 in 1992, Business Taxes Representative in 1992, and Business Taxes Compliance Specialist in 1998, and Business Taxes Specialist in 2006. She is currently based out of the Legal Department in the Special Operations Branch. And the last retiree, Cynthia Thomas, is retiring after 39 years of state service. She began her career with the BOE in 1976 as a clerk typist in the Alphabetical Reference Unit. She promoted to Office Technician in 1981, Program Technician 2 in 1984, Program Technician 3 in 1988, Business Taxes Representative in 1988, Business Taxes Compliance Specialist in 1994, Business Taxes Specialist 1 in 2001, Business Taxes Compliance Supervisor 2 in 2004, and Business Taxes Administrator in 2012. She is currently based out of the Return Analysis Unit. So we wish all these three longtime BOE members well in their retirement. Okay.
Boy.
Ms. Richmond, next items.
Next item is N2. We have a board resolution for Shelley L. Hughes.
Mr. Horton, would you like
Oh, thank you,
make some
Madam
comments?
Chair. As most of you know, Shelley was a team member in our office, partner with us, and has done some exceptional work, you know, as the chief counsel for the Board of Equalization in my office. And that has afforded her an opportunity to move on, and she's now the assistant director over in Nevada. So she's a second in charge in taxation in Nevada, soon to be the first, if we have any influence over the Nevada legislature. But, and so we're excited about that. Thank you, members, for acknowledging and recognizing her work. Linda is here. She's replacing her. And Linda, if we can give her a round of applause, she's going to take Shelley's place. Some high heels to fill, but I think she's more than capable of doing that. Thank you, members.
High heels to fill. That's good.
Thank you. Ms. Richmond, do we need a...
Our next item
Next
is
item.
N3, approval of board meeting minutes for April 26, 27, 2016. Item N4, proposed revisions to Audit Manual, Chapter 4, General Audit Procedures, and Chapter 9, Grocers. Item N5, proposed revisions to Compliance Policy and Procedures Manual, Chapter 2, Registration, and Chapter 7, Collections. Item N6, report on time extensions to Alpine, Mariposa, Modoc, Monterey, and Plumas counties to complete and submit fiscal year 2016-17 local assessment roll pursuant to Revenue and Taxation Code Section 155, and item N7, adoption of property tax forms. These items may be adopted in one vote.
Move consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Runner, move the consent calendar as a whole. Ms. Stowers seconded. I'm seeing no objection. Motion carries. Ms. Richmond, please introduce the next item.
Our next item is item O, adoption of board committee reports and approval of committee actions. O1 is the legislative committee report.
Have I seen it?
Here's a ledge committee
Right.
report, just came out. Should be on your,
Right here.
Move approval.
Second.
It's fine.
Fine.
okay. Mr. Horton, made the motion, Ms. Stowers seconded. Without objection, motion carries. Ms. Richmond, next item.
Our next item is item P, other administrative matters. Item P1 is the executive director's report. P11, board meeting interpreter process and guidelines.
Okay, I think Mr. Gilman is going to be coming up, as well as Mr. Gao, on the interpreter, utilizing interpreters here for board hearings.
I don't see Mr. Gilman.
I don't think Mr. Gilman is.
Okay, why don't we skip over that, and then when Mr. Gilman comes down, we will go back to that item. Ms. Richmond, next item.
So our next item is P5, property tax deputy director's report. P51, adoption of 4R Act equalization ratio for fiscal year 2016-17.
Mr. Durham?
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Mark Durham, and I'm with the research section. The item before you is the 4R equalization ratio. The 4R stand for Railroad Revitalization and Regulatory Reform Act that was enacted by Congress in 1976. Revenue and Taxation Code Section 1817 requires the board to conduct a study and determine the statewide and county-by-county ratio of assessed value to fair market value of commercial and industrial property. Staff conducted this study using the 2014-15 property roll and yielded an estimated statewide ratio of 66.9%. This is a decrease of 7.21% from last year's 74.11%. The continued downward trend is reflective of a recovering commercial real estate market. Therefore, staff recommends that the board assess rail transportation property at 66.9% of the market value for the 2016-17 roll. Thank you.
Any questions, members?
Move
Seeing none.
adoption, staff recommendation.
Mr. Horton moves, Ms. Harkey seconds to approve staff recommendation. Without objection, motion carries. Ms. Richmond, next item.
Thank you.
Our next item is P7, technology deputy director's report. P71, CROS project update and actions.
Okay, Ms. Fleming. Welcome.
Thank you. So it looks like I too have a few people missing today, so I'm going to punt.
Forgot they were meeting today.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just tell us the good news.
Yeah.
We're all green. Good afternoon, honorable members, Madam Chair, and honorable members. I'm Brenda Fleming, of course, the Chief Information Officer and Deputy Director for the Technology Services Department. I would say with me today are Chris Cayetti and Trista Gonzalez. They may be stuck in the elevator on their way. The progress at this point is still green. We're making good progress on all of the key activities within the project. As noted, good progress with negotiations are continuing. We'll resume more of those negotiating starting next week. No issues or risk or concerns at this time. We're moving forward, as we've talked about before, with our Fit and Ready campaign. We're excited about that. So still cooking it a little bit, so we'll continue to bring some information for it to you as that gets ready. And we'll be soon in contact with you for specific timeframes and scripts for the videos that we'll have you participate in. The next one up for the sponsor videos is going to be Mr. Wayne Mashahar.
Okay, here are your team members.
There we go.
Please join us
Hey, guys.
and introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Trista Gonzalez, CROS Business Project Manager.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Chris Cayetti, Project Director for CROS.
Welcome to your first meeting.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
This is the first meeting?
Yes,
Yes.
it is.
You know what we do in
Hot
the
seat. So-
legislature.
Hazing begins.
First bill.
Are you guys going to give him the
Yes.
orientation,
Yes.
initiation?
We have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just go.
I'm going to defer to Madam Chair.
So I was just finishing up, if I may, and excuse us for the little bit of a change in process here today. So I just kind of finished Ms. Gonzalez's comments, and I can turn it over to Mr. Coyote.
Thanks, Brenda. So from the project side on CROS, improvements have been initiated for the enterprise planning and resource management processes to ensure availability of staff resources for CROS, BOE-wide. The team also continues to refine our CROS project governance plan to support effective and timely decision-making for the project at the appropriate levels. The special project report was approved by the Department of Technology. Yay! Big milestone to reflect our schedule changes, and this approval allows the project to move into the next phase of the project. So we're very excited about that big milestone for the project team. The fiscal year 16-17 spring finance letter is pending approval by the legislature, and our data readiness tasks and work on interfaces is progressing as planned. Some of the activities we have planned for the upcoming month, including beginning a skills and knowledge readiness assessment of all project and BOE staff so we can provide tools and training to staff before the vendor arrives. This is a key piece of our readiness to make sure that staff is ready when the vendor comes in to work side by side with them. Continue to collaborate with our project oversight stakeholders at the Department of Technology and the Department of Finance. Continue our enterprise planning and resource management process improvement efforts. Continue to develop our project communications and messages for staff to address feedback expressed as part of the team's organizational change management outreach and readiness assessment efforts. And then our budget status remains green, and we have no major issues or risks to report at this time. The organization is very excited about the activities that lie ahead, because after 5 years of patiently waiting, the wait is almost over and the transformation efforts will really begin soon.
So thank you for that, Chris. Members, just to keep you informed.
1 second.
I'm sorry.
Chris.
Questions, Mr. Horton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You use this term, yay. What is that?
Yay!
Forgot.
That means
We're excited.
Oh, God.
It's a technical term.
My apologies.
What does the first S in CROS stand for? Let me move on. Don't worry. Why are we
Welcome
issuing spring finance letters in the summer?
Because that's what the
That's okay.
legislature's
That's-
process is for.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
They run behind.
Okay. Ms. Fleming, please continue.
Thank you. Members, to keep you informed, introductory meetings with the Senate Subcommittee for staff are in progress. These meetings are in response to feedback from the members of the committee themselves, of the subcommittee. The intent of it is to improve the communications and transparency and information with the legislature, as we've been talking about on a number of other items also. A series of quarterly meetings has been suggested to facilitate those communications, and they've invited the Department of Technology and the Department of Finance to participate with us. So we'll start to organize for those, present that to you first so you know what our game plan is, but it really is to shake hands. They just want to make sure that they're fully involved. They are concerned also about ensuring that Department of Finance and the Department of Technology are strongly engaged in that oversight. So we'll do our best to make sure that those relationships are intact, and we continue to have the support of the legislature.
Have they hired a new director of technology over there?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Chairwoman,
Ms. Dowers?
just one question. You say that the budget status remains green. What's the cost year-to-date on the project?
I don't have that right in front of me.
We'll get the information
that
for
for
you.
you.
We're spending, and I don't have the numbers I have from last month, but we'll send that information to you, so we've got the current one. The last report we had in April, so we're mid-March, so we want to get that updated information for you. I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me, and I've been running the numbers down the street on some other numbers. I apologize.
Yeah, so that'd be good if you can just report.
Yeah, we'll make sure, and it's typically a part of our notes.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay.
Why you're up here? Pardon?
Why am I up here?
Yes.
I'm representing the business side of the CROS project.
Do you want to tell us something about that?
Got nothing to say.
Things are progressing very well. We've been doing a lot of work and really engaging our district offices and headquarters sections from the business side in the project.
Thank you. Well done, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much. This is an informational item, so no vote needed. Thank you all for your update, and we look forward to actually starting this project.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
We appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think the last item on the agenda is the interpreter process. Mr. Gilman is here, so we'd like to welcome Mr. Gilman to the podium.
Members, I apologize for my tardiness. I was on the phone with CalHR to see if they were going to be able to attend.
Oh.
And they were planning on being here at 12:30, and I said it's moving fast, but I wasn't able to reach them. So if they show up, they show up. So, Madam Chair, members of the board, Todd Gelman, Taxpayers' Rights Advocate with the State Board of Equalization. In April of 2015, the Board Proceedings Division, along with the Legal Department Settlement and Taxpayer Services Division, met with the Taxpayers' Rights and Equal Employment Opportunity Division to discuss the process for interpreters at board meetings. Previously, when an interpreter was requested for a board meeting, board proceedings would request an employee from BOE's certified bilingual list. However, after the March 2015 board meeting, concerns were raised with respect to the quality of interpreter services provided. Further, on August 28, 2015, a memorandum was issued by the California Department of Human Resources, Office of Civil Rights, that provides state agencies direction on when certified interpreters are to be used. CalHR's memorandum states in part that when a state agency is conducting an administrative hearing, state agencies are required to use interpreters from CalHR's list of certified interpreters or interpreters certified by the Judicial Council. The board should only use employees from its certified or volunteer bilingual list at board meetings when interpreters from CalHR's certified interpreter list or Judicial Council certified interpreter list are not available. When requested, a taxpayer has the right to have a qualified interpreter at a board meeting. The interpreter's role is to interpret for the taxpayer, the witnesses, and the board members what is being said between all parties during the hearing. Professional interpreters are skilled and experienced in administrative hearings and understand their role in the process, which is to interpret verbatim what is being said during the hearing. The board's EEO office has had an interpreter contract with Language People since July of 2014. The contract provides interpreter services that are not available through the board's certified or volunteer bilingual list. Language People's interpreters are certified by CalHR and the Judicial Council and are professionally trained in both simultaneous and consecutive interpreting. In addition, the interpreters have experience in court and administrative proceedings and understand their role in the hearing process. The interpreter is not a technical expert, nor are they responsible for responding to the taxpayer's questions during the hearing. Therefore, it is not required that the interpreter have technical, administrative, or program knowledge of the BOE. In fact, it's in the board's best interest to use professional interpreters who has no interest in the case or relationship with the Board of Equalization. Members, you witnessed the quality of using professional interpreters at the April board meeting. It was apparent that the communication substantially improved when the interpreter was used during the hearing. The interpreters were skilled in simultaneous and consecutive interpreting and was able to switch the type of interpreting when requested. It is for these reasons that it is recommended that the board use professional interpreters to provide simultaneous or consecutive interpretation when a taxpayer requests an interpreter for a board meeting. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to try to answer your questions now.
Mr. Renner.
Just, there was a discussion that we had at the last meeting as that where this came up, or where the interpreter was there. And in terms of, there seemed to be confusion whether or not it was okay to use simultaneous or consecutive. And so I'm not sure, I think there was a thought that somehow if we use simultaneous, then something isn't being recorded for the record. And so I'd like to kind of have I'd like to know whether or not we think we are out of the protection of the taxpayer or the board if we indeed do simultaneous versus consecutive.
Right. Randy Ferris, Chief Counsel. The reason why the interpreter is introduced and sworn in and certified by the chairwoman before the translation starts is to establish for the record the qualification of the interpreter to do the interpretation, including simultaneous. So that certification and swearing in is what protects us in terms of due process to where we can feel comfortable with simultaneous interpretation.
Does that become a preference then for the taxpayer, or do we create the policy, or what do we create the norm, or does that become a preference for the taxpayer?
I think it's a preference for the taxpayer.
Okay.
I think that the better way to do it is simultaneous.
Okay.
But, and there are no due process issues with doing simultaneous.
Okay, good. I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
So I think that's what the confusion was. I think we thought, or we had agreed it was going to be simultaneous, which means they wear headphones, they're talking directly, is it headphones or they talk
necessarily,
directly into their ear?
They can.
Okay, but it was very confusing having her talk into his ear and us trying to hear it.
Right.
And the taxpayers seemed to speak English and started answering on his own. So that's why I kind of switched him to, consecutive. It just takes a little bit longer, and you have to break down the sentences and wait for the interpretation. But I think it just depends on a taxpayer-by-taxpayer basis what their level of English is, and whether we need that. And somehow, there has to be because it was distracting, right?
Right. I thought that maybe what would have helped is if the interpreter would have pushed the microphone away, because you were getting ambient noise. I was there, and I
think
thought
we actually
that...
instructed you to put it up.
Right.
So I think we created some of the...
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, there are headsets, that people like from the UN use. I mean, I think if
Right.
we're going to go that way, we need to set up that headset system so that the taxpayer is actually hearing. I mean, do we have to hear it on screen recorded?
No.
No. Okay.
My
So
Armenian wasn't that good to understand anything.
yeah. So maybe that is a solution that they can put up the headset and listen to the interpreter, and she doesn't have to sit there and talk into the microphone, but she could be sitting, a little bit further away, and then it wouldn't be so distracting, I think, for further proceedings.
Yeah, I would prefer simultaneous, but I don't want it to be distracting, so maybe if we could structure that in such a way it makes sense.
It doesn't happen all the time, so let's just figure out what works. And I think that the chairwoman's comment about it may depend on the level of need of the taxpayer. What's important, I think, is that we understand the argument they're making and that we get the clear wording. That's something that we need for the record. So if the taxpayer is going to interfere with the interpreter, then maybe at that point we decide who it is we want. Who is it that's really going to speak? Maybe we ask the question.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Mr. Horton.
I would actually defer to the chair in making that call on a case-by-case basis, because what she's going to observe, we're all going to observe. And if the inherent challenge is that the taxpayer seeks to have a private conversation with the interpreter, and they don't necessarily want that interpreted. They just want a clarification and something that they don't want to put on record, or we see these conversations going backwards and forward, and it just becomes inherently sort of confusing. But I think, I personally would just defer to the chair and not establish any policy, and just as she so will in that regard. I'm not an advocate of contracting out anything that state employees can do. I get the concern about the level of skills that are necessary in order to provide this at the level of proficiency that we're seeking to do. And so in that regard, I can be supportive of this. There is some concern about having a BOE interpreter present, so that BOE interpreter can assure us that, none of this, the conversations aren't going on that should be on record, should not be on record, personal, and so forth. And at the same time, if we run into a more technical discussion, we don't end up articulating that. The interpreter is the one that does it. And so having that checks and balances would be helpful. At the same time, for me personally, it maintains an opportunity for our employees to continue to have value in this process in a way that they are receiving their credits that they need in order to get the pay differential that they receive for that. So I think it provides, it solves a number of issues if we have a BOE employee present at that time. And I think, so that would be my recommendation, Madam Chair.
And can we talk about the pay differential since we're talking about it so that we all understand what is the pay differential and how do you get it? How do you earn it?
Well, I understand that most of the employees actually earn it while they're in the district.
Right.
Because they do a lot of work as people come in. Unless their language is a language that is not necessarily utilized in the district and where they're located, then we may find some shortfall. And so most of the employees are going to reach their goal and objective or meet the criteria that they need to meet in order to have that salary differential. And I don't know if there's a study on employee by employee as to whether or not that is the case. The concern, again, is not only that maybe nominal, at the end of the day, it may be employee by employee, is having the employee present as a representative of the Board of Equalization, I think adds just value to the process, to a check and balance that these conversations are consistent. And when there is complexity, someone speaks the language and understands the technology, understands the lingo, the jargon of the Board of Equalization can be of assistance. And it only happens, 5-10 times a year.
Okay.
Move the staff recommendation.
I have a question first.
Okay, Ms. Stowers, I still want my question answered, so Ms. Stowers.
What's the cost of this service?
It depends on the language and the service that's being provided. As an example, if we get a request for someone that needs to interpret, say, American Sign Language, for example, it's generally about $170 to $200, depending on the amount of time that the individual is needed to interpret or provide sign language. So we had recently had a request for someone that could interpret Norwegian. For example, we received a document in Norwegian, so we didn't have anybody, obviously, that can interpret in Norwegian. So we contracted out with Language People, and for that particular service, it was $110 to have them interpret that document so we can understand what exactly the taxpayer was asking the BOE to do or follow up on.
And if it was something like more typical Spanish?
For Spanish, Spanish is obviously going to be less because it's a more used language, obviously, as a second language, and it generally is. I don't have the exact number in terms of what it would cost. I can get the information if you would like to know exactly what the costs are for Spanish or some of the other language, but I do have some figures for. Like Tagalog, for example, we had a person that contacted us and just wanted to have a phone conversation in Tagalog with one of our staff, and it was $19.80 to have that person translate, and it may have been a 10-minute conversation. Armenian, the cost for that individual to show up and do simultaneous interpretation, which simultaneous is more expensive. It was $480 for that person to interpret. Of course, that starts from the time that she was there until the time that it was concluded. So.
You said it costs more, but
it is more.
We went back
it is more.
and
It's a more
forth.
specialized skill.
Oh, so we have to say we want someone that can do simultaneous, and we may change during the hearing.
That's correct.
You still have to.
And we still have to pay
So
whatever that.
consecutive would be less.
Yeah.
Simultaneous would be more.
And so when we talk about our own staff being trained or certified, what does that mean just for people who are listening? They may be interested in signing up and, who do they contact? How many hours? When Mr. Horton talks about
Right.
meeting their requirements, what does that mean?
I jotted down some notes, and so I'll read them to you. To qualify for bilingual pay, it is required that our employees pass a bilingual fluency exam first. Once the employee passes the bilingual fluency exam, they will become certified in that language, and we administer the exam here at the BOE. Okay. So our Human Resources Division administers that exam. In order to receive the bilingual pay, the employee must demonstrate that they are using the language other than English to perform their duties at least 10% of the time in their normal course of work. to determine if the employee is meeting the 10% criteria. BOE requires that the employee complete a bilingual pay authorization form. That form documents their time spent performing those duties in the language other than English over a 2-week period in their normal course of work. So once they do that, there's a pack of information that then goes through the district. For example, we'll use a district as an example. It would go through the chain of command there. It would go all the way up to the deputy director of the program. They would sign off on it. That whole package then comes to the EEO office. We review the package to make sure all the documents are filled out correctly, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, and then we send back that package to the originator, which is that person in the district, and then they send that information to our Human Resources Division. Then that gets keyed in so they can receive the differential.
Madam Chair?
And then does it last for a year, or they have to get certified every year? Do they need
I believe it's a
continuing
one-time
education?
certification process. They're not required to be recertified.
And then do they go on a list? So if someone calls, like someone, you speak Norwegian, so when we have
Right.
that.
That would be our certified list. So we have two lists.
Okay.
We have a certified and a non-certified list. Anyone can avail themselves to be on the non-certified list if they speak a language that they think that would help the BOE in translating it for our taxpayers that don't speak English as a first language, then they can be put on the list. Certified the same way. If they want to be on the list, they can be on the list. So we have obviously more individuals that speak more languages on the non-certified list than we do on the certified list, because now you've had to take a efficiency exam to prove that you can actually speak in that language and interpret for the taxpayer appropriately.
So do they get the differential pay on each assignment? Like, let's say, it requires, 4 hours of their work. Do they get paid more?
They get it monthly. It's added to their monthly salary. So once you pass the certification and demonstrate that you use that language more than 10% of the time in your normal course of work, then you get the differential added to your salary.
Okay, so they're like on call.
Right. The expectation would be that since now you're certified and you're on that list, you've availed yourself, you're going to help those people at the counter or wherever you're going to be in that language.
Okay.
And then so the list, to take it a step further, when a person has a taxpayer in their office, for example, that speaks a certain language, that resource list that we have, the EEO oversees, is available to our management and our employees to search through and find a person that speaks that language, and they can call them and say, I have this person coming in tomorrow, for example. I need someone to assist me speaking Punjabi. And I notice you have someone on the list. Okay. The only thing we caution management about is making sure that you don't use that same person over and over and over, because it may affect their normal work duties. If we have other individuals that speak that language, then you should rotate it. You shouldn't be using the same person consistently. Okay, now, with Spanish, obviously, that wouldn't be an issue because we have a number of individuals that are certified in Spanish at the BOE.
Okay, so who maintains that list? You or the Department of Resources?
The Equal Employment Opportunity Office maintains that list.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. Horton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The certification process for the Board of Equalization, what's the difference between that process and the process for the folks that we're looking to contract out with, or we've been contracting, which is kind of new to me, but what's the difference of the certification process?
The CalHR certification.
In fact, we have someone from CalHR here. If we could have them come up, maybe they can add some
That'd be great.
extra to that.
Welcome. Thank you. We're a little bit ahead of our agenda, so we appreciate you coming down. If you could introduce yourself for the record, that would be
I'm
great.
Glenna Wheeler. I'm the Chief of Civil Rights for CalHR.
Okay.
I'm John Herring. I'm the program manager for the interpreter program.
Okay, great. I don't know, how long have you been sitting there? The whole time?
No, just 2 minutes.
Oh. Okay, so I think we basically got your letter last August advising all the state agencies to use professional in court certified interpreters through People First, I guess is the contractor that won the bid. And we did have a representative interpret in Armenian at our last meeting. And there was just some questions on, what is the requirement? If there are other people that we can use, if languages aren't required, and just simultaneous versus consecutive interpretation, just kind of trying to figure out for the next hearing how we ensure that there's a smooth interpreter process. We transitioned them from consecutive to simultaneous to consecutive because she was talking in the microphone and it was very, very distracting. And so how do we, can we get like an earphone thing so that the taxpayer can hear it, yet we don't have to all hear, background noise, for example. And so maybe you can just talk a little bit about the program and whether we are required as an agency to use these folks or not required, when, what types of situations.
So the professional interpreters that we were speaking to in the letter that you referred to last August, and that's the standard letter that we send out every year, basically letting departments know that we've replenished the list. In fact, right now is the peak time when everyone has to renew their certification. So they're sending their checks in. We're sending those interpreters a new sticker to show that they're still certified, and they have to put that on their badge with their picture. So those are the professional certified interpreters that are on the CalHR list, or they also can be on the Judicial Council's list. They could work for places like Language People. So they're professional certified interpreters, as opposed to the bilingual employees, which I think may be where there is some confusion. So the bilingual employees who we certify through CalHR are the employees that are state employees who speak another language more than 10% of the time during their job, and they get that pay differential. So they are not the certified interpreters that are required to be used for administrative hearings and medical appointments, medical examinations. So there's the distinction there that I'm not sure if maybe that was one of the issues Mr. Gilman had prepared or provided us with some information that I believe was for this board meeting, and we didn't have any disagreement with it at all. Basically, if it's an administrative hearing, where the law that our program interprets is that it does need to be a certified interpreter. So, not sure.
There is, in the circumstance that you're unable to secure a certified interpreter, you do have the option of providing a certification on a temporary basis to someone that's capable that you are able to reach, and so that's...
Yes, so there is that option of a provisional requirement in the case that you can't get the interpreter. And it does look like that is one of the later options that Board of Equalization uses as an option if they can't get a certified interpreter. And we're fine with that.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Horton?
First, welcome, Ms. Wheeler, and congratulations again. The question that I had was the certification process for the two different groups, the professional and the employee that speaks the other language. They're both being certified. Is the certification process different?
Yes, the certification process for the professional interpreters, they must pass a written and an oral state certification exam. So these are usually people who've taken courses, they've gone to school for this, they're becoming professional interpreters as their job. CalHR does not offer that exam at this time. In fact, we're evaluating our interpreter program now to see if maybe we should offer that exam to offer, more services to our customers, or whether CalHR should look at other alternatives for maintaining that list of interpreters. Right now, it's getting a little bit smaller every year because people are kind of retiring, and it's not being added to because we don't give the exam. And a lot of people are on those other lists, like the Judicial Council list. The bilingual oral exam that we give, that is an exam that's just given by someone who, for instance, our office technician in our office is certified, and she speaks Spanish, and she gives the exam for us. So it's more of a conversational exam. It does not have the requirements that the certified interpreter examination does.
Is it possible for BOE employees to take the certified exam if they wish and be placed on this list, or is it just a separate company that they have to go through? How does that work?
For the oral bilingual exam, they could take that at any time by requesting it through CalHR, and we put them on a list, and that would, allow them to become a bilingual employee and receive the bilingual pay. For the professional certified interpreters, they would have to take, I'm not sure what the schooling is, since we don't give the exam, I'm not sure what the schooling is that's required for them, but they would have to pass a professional oral and written. We don't have a written component at all for the bilingual oral exams that we give to bilingual employees who, work in reception areas and deal with the public, the ones that speak other languages more than 10% of their job. There's no written component, so that's a big difference in the two. John, do you know the educational requirements?
We are currently researching what opportunities, what options might be available in order to provide that in the future to state employees. However, at present, most of what we've found, the bar to get into those tests is equivalent to a bachelor's degree in the other language that you're looking at translating.
So these are generally people who have gone to school. They want to be certified interpreters as their career, as opposed to state employees who are doing it as an additional part of their job.
And the memo that we received, that's pursuant to statute that we're required by law to do this?
Yes. The memo, again, was just kind of letting everyone know that we've replenished the list. Everyone's renewed for this year. If you want to look at the new list, those people have all, I think what's the deadline, June 1st, to renew your certification license. So after June 1st, and they kind of trickle in for a while, so usually that memo goes out about end of July or August. We're letting departments know we have a new list, and these, feel free to request it at any time. But it does repeat the requirement that if it's for administrative hearings or medical exams, it needs to be a certified interpreter.
How long has that law been in place?
Good question. Very, very long time. Do you have that?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's...
I won't ask the next question.
A long time.
Yeah, a long time. is
Very,
good.
very long time.
I'll take that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, a couple things, members. I believe we should avail that opportunity to our employees, and I believe that they should receive the additional compensation if we were able to kind of figure that out, if they were on this list and could provide that greater service, if they so desire to have that skill set. I still continue to believe that we should have BOE employee at least present while the interpreter is doing the interpretation in the event that we run into some technical area where the jargon is not clear to either the taxpayer or the interpreter.
There is, if I may, also a provision for the board to review ahead of time any interpreter with that particular thought in mind that there may be some specific jargon. So we encourage you to go through a setting with the interpreter beforehand and verify that they have a sense of the particular words that are likely to come up in the hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, great. So is there a motion?
Motion.
Okay, yes.
Approve staff report.
Mr. Runner?
Recommendation, excuse me.
Thank you.
Mr. Runner moves. Ms. Harkey seconds to approve the staff recommendation without objection. Motion.
Members, I'm just no on principle of this without having the BOE staff have some sort of opportunity as a caveat for this. I'm just not prepared to do that.
Okay, well, perhaps we can get a little bit more information on how BOE staff members can get certified, get a little bit more background in terms of who can and how they can become certified, get on this list. And I mean, I can't tell Cal HR to do this, but I think, we can have Mr. Gilman work with Cal HR to see if there's any paths for our employees and to inform them and let them know that there are probably additional opportunities for them to get to that next level.
I think it would be a memo out to staff talking about the policy interpretation and then providing for those who may want to go ahead and expand their skills, a process to how to do that.
Right.
That seems to make sense.
We should find out what the process is.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's
There's training and schooling involved.
Right. So we just tell them where to go find that.
Okay.
Yep.
One point of clarification, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
Mr. Gann.
At the beginning of the presentation, you made a comment about maybe we should, and Member Horton too, about whether the decision should be left up to the taxpayer as to whether they want to go simultaneous or consecutive. Do you still want us to pursue that? Or, in other words, if the taxpayer feels more comfortable going consecutive as opposed to simultaneous, you want them to make that decision?
I think so. It's basically that, remember what it is, it's the taxpayer's testimony.
Right.
So I would think that, again, the taxpayer has the ability then to, if in terms of their own personal representation, what they believe is best represents their story, we need to accommodate the taxpayer, I would think.
I think it has to be a case-by-case basis.
Right.
I think it's case by case.
But if it is going to be simultaneous, I'd like to look at the ear option.
Right.
You know, that earpiece option, it's much quieter.
Okay.
I think, if I may, one of the problems we're going to have is if you ask them, they're not going to know which is which, you know, I mean,
Right.
so I think that it does have to be case by case, and I don't think the simultaneous is like totally necessary. I think that if we can get the sentence and understand it, seems to work best for us and best for the taxpayers, because they seem to always want to interrupt because they've got more stuff they want to say, and I understand that. So I think, you know, if we can break it down, it's just easier for us. I think the simultaneous was a bit of a problem for us because we had a lot of people talking.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the motion carried with 4 abstain, or no?
No.
He's a no, so 4-1.
Thank you, members.
Thank you, and we'll continue this conversation. Before we adjourn, I have 3 adjourn in memories this month. Carol Connolly, Neil Holloway, and Ben Tang. Carol Connolly worked in the Use Tax Administration Section, Field Operations Department. Carol was with the BOE for 23 years. She began her career with the state of California at the Department of Motor Vehicles and advanced to a Tax Technician 3 with the State Board of Equalization. Neil Holloway worked in the Information Security Office Administration Department. Neil was with the BOE for the last 8 years. He started as a staff information security analyst and was later promoted to senior information security analyst. And Ben Tang, who many of us know, here worked in the County Assessed Property Division, Property Tax Department. Ben was with the BOE for 16 years. He started as an associate property appraiser, advanced to positions of increasing responsibility, and was the chief of the County Assessed Properties Division when he retired in 2015. On behalf of the State Board of Equalization, we express our deepest sympathy to their family and friends. Thank you, Ms. Richmond. I believe that concludes today's meeting.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Thank you all.